That last video was pretty damn crazy, right? That took me like 3 months just to write the script. I mean, did I procrastinate a little? Yes, maybe. But it still took me a very long time to make. I'm hoping this one won't take nearly as long, but it's a Metal Gear game, so there's gonna be a lot to talk about. Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, began development almost immediately after the success of Metal Gear Solid in 1998, with Hideo Kojima completing an extensive design document in January of 1999 that outlined both technical ambition and a radical thematic shift for the series. In this early plan, later published through the document of Metal Gear Solid 2, and translated by fans, Kojima emphasized that a sequel would not simply be bigger, but fundamentally different in how it engaged the player, focusing on information, control, and perception in a digital age. Speaking later about this period, Kojima explained that the move to PlayStation 2 allowed him to rethink the series' core priorities. This ambition resulted in complex enemy AI, interactive spaces, and a cinematic presentation designed to blur the boundary between gameplay and authored narrative. Supported by a development team of over 100 staff working across nearly 4 years. The project's most turbulent moment came late in development, following the tragedy that struck America on September 11th. This horrifying event closely echoed imagery already present in the game. In a Japanese interview with Weekly Toyo Keizai, Kojima revealed that the team made over 300 individual changes to the game's content, stating, "We changed about 300 parts of the scenario and visuals. At one point, I thought the game might not be releasable at all." He later admitted that the emotional weight of the moment nearly caused him to abandon the project entirely. This is another quote from him. "I felt a strong responsibility. Could this game exist in a world after what had happened?" Ultimately, with support from Konami and Sony, Kojima chose to release Metal Gear Solid 2 largely intact, believing its themes had become even more relevant. The result was a work that would challenge expectations, divide audiences, and later be recognised as one of the most prescient games ever made. Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, begins like a familiar sequel. Covert operations, nuclear weapons, and a legendary soldier operating in the shadows of global politics. Set across multiple locations and timelines, the game places players inside a high-stakes anti-terror mission where nothing feels entirely stable. As the operation unfolds, Sons of Liberty steadily erodes the idea of a reliable narrative, making events echo earlier conflicts in unsettling ways as technology blurs the line between training and reality. What initially appears to be a rescue operation begins to feel more like an experiment. Beneath its stealth action and cinematic spectacle, the game quietly asks unnerving questions about identity and how truth is shaped in a world saturated with digital information. Rather than offering clear answers, MGS 2 builds tension through doubt. It encourages the player to question what they're told, why they're following orders, and whether freedom can exist inside systems designed by unseen forces. So, if that sounds like your cup of tea, stick around. The game opens with a flashback to 2 years before present day, which is also 2 years after Shadow Moses. It's confusing right now, but it'll clear up. Snake narrates the setup. He and Otacon have received classified intelligence about a new Metal Gear prototype being transported through New York's Hudson River. Instead of a remote base, the threat now sits in the middle of a massive American city. Under the cover of an absolutely ginormous rainstorm, Snake infiltrates the tanker by performing one of the most badass descents in gaming history. He's also now equipped with the stealth camouflage technology that Otacon developed during Shadow Moses, which he will never use again. Being watched by an unseen Revolver Ocelot in a helicopter above, he lands harshly on the tanker, showing us that this is not a clean, sanctioned operation, but a risky incursion into murky geopolitical waters. And it also serves as a showcase for the PlayStation 2 hardware. Comparing MGS2 to the original Metal Gear Solid highlights just how massive the leap in graphical fidelity and environmental detail really was. After the amazing title card, Snake contacts Otacon, which provides us as the player with not only the new codec screen, which I think is not as cool as the first one, but also provides us with a new inside joke, and some much needed context. During this conversation, we learn that Snake and Otacon now operate as members of Philanthropy, an unofficial anti-Metal Gear organisation working outside the government authority. Otacon explains that after Shadow Moses, Metal Gear blueprints leaked onto the global black market, largely because of his own actions, but as a result, Metal Gear development has spread across the world. But this new model is different. The prototype being transported on the tanker is an amphibious anti-Metal Gear platform designed specifically to destroy other Metal Gears. Which brings us to Snake's actual mission. This time, he isn't here to destroy the weapon, he's here to expose it. Snake carries a camera so he can photograph the prototype and reveal its existence to the world before another nuclear arms race begins. However, as Snake explores the tanker, several details immediately raise suspicion. The Marines, for example, appear lightly armed and positioned for visibility rather than defense. This suggests that the military want to appear harmless to anyone observing from the river. But there's more. The ship's unusually high waterline indicates enormous weight hidden below deck, reinforcing the likelihood that Metal Gear is concealed within the ass of the ship. Snake also knows the intel that they received could be bait. With a massive bounty on both his and Otacon's heads, that paranoia is completely justified. The mission then abruptly turns violent when a helicopter arrives and masked soldiers begin to silently slaughter the Marines and take control of the ship with, honestly, beautiful efficiency. Snake and Otacon estimate that roughly 18 soldiers would be required to take over a vessel of this size, so at least we have some idea of how many soldiers we're going to be dealing with. Snake identifies the weapons carried by the attackers as Russian-made. He quickly snaps a photograph of their apparent commander so Otacon can try to identify him. Even though the tanker is now absolutely crawling with Sukas, Snake aims to resist direct engagement as open combat would jeopardize his mission. But before you let loose and go for it, I suggest you do what I did and familiarize yourself with the controls and the new mechanics. MGS2 introduces first-person aiming, allowing you to target specific body parts. The reason this is so important now is because you have been issued a tranquilizer gun instead of a pistol. Headshots or vital hits can instantly put guards to sleep, whilst weaker shots may require multiple darts. Thankfully for us, the laser sight makes aiming far easier. The cover system has also been expanded. You can now move the camera while hiding and lean out to track enemies. More importantly, guards now react to what they actually see. If part of your body is visible, even just a foot, they will investigate. You can also now blind fire from cover, which is honestly a little overpowered. Overall, the stealth system is far more dynamic than the first game. It's harder, definitely, but it also gives the player more control over sightlines and positioning. But of course, I still got spotted constantly. Right, let's get started. Oh yeah, you can now also vault, which allows the environments to be designed with much more verticality, which is always a good idea. The game also introduces more items, including medical supplies like bandages and medicine. These can do things like stabilize bleeding or reduce weapon sway. Although I personally barely use them outside a single late game section. Another amazing feature of the new 3D technology is being able to aim in between things like railings. It now doesn't matter if a guard is on another level to you, as long as your laser sight is kissing their dome piece, you can hit them with a sleep dart. But anyway, let's get inside this goddamn tanker. Once inside, you'll quickly learn that lockers can be opened and closed. Sometimes they contain items, and you can also hide inside of them. Personally, I almost never use them after this point, so I can't really say how effective they are at actually hiding you. Remember to try and use your eyes when you explore this tanker, because if you don't, you'll do what I did.
Snake, respond! Snake! Snake!
But if you actually wait for Otacon to call you, he will warn you about the bombs before you step on them, as well as suggesting that you might be able to get past without setting them off. Remembering what I learned while making my videos on the previous game, I equip my cigarettes, and the smoke reveals the tripwires instantly. But I decide to go around them anyway. There's no need to tempt death. But with the enemies tranquilized, we make it to the bridge. Looking outside, Snake sees incoming helos delivering more soldiers. This means he has to be even quicker about gathering his data, which he does. Snake confirms the tanker's coordinates with Otacon. The ship is operating far out of the Atlantic, well beyond standard US naval coverage. And with this, Otacon deduces that the Metal Gear prototype aboard is designed for independent Marine Corps deployment, capable of operating without fleet support. But before he can continue, Snake hears something. He then spots a woman speaking over the radio in the rain. She reports to the same officer Snake previously photographed and says that the tanker's critical areas are secured and the explosives are in place. The Russians plan to seize the Metal Gear prototype and then blow up the ship to erase the evidence. The commander also reveals something personal. The woman is pregnant with his grandchild, and he orders her to step off the ship. The woman, who we find out is called Olga, refuses to do this and declares loyalty to her unit over her own safety. As the helicopter departs, Snake confronts her. She identifies herself cryptically as a nomad, mirroring Snake's own identity as a soldier without allegiance. The tension between them is immediate, and during a momentary distraction, she reveals a hidden firearm built into her knife and fires at Snake, which he somehow manages to dodge. The encounter confirms what Snake already suspected. She's an elite soldier, almost certainly Spetsnaz, and now we have to fight her. But actually, the fight is really simple. You both just run in and out of cover, trading shots when an opportunity appears, and that's about it. There's not much strategy here, just keep the pressure on and she'll eventually go down. With Olga now no longer fighting back, Snake takes the opportunity to yoink her weapon, but realises it's got no ammo left.
Oh shit.
That's okay, Snake, we'll find some, don't worry. At that moment, a surveillance drone appears overhead, an army model Cypher, and it briefly scans the area before pissing off. Now, this may seem insignificant, but it changes quite a lot. Snake immediately realises that the tanker isn't just under Russian control. Someone else is watching the entire operation. Multiple factions are observing this situation, and this subtle moment foreshadows one of the game's central themes: systems watching other systems. Snake contacts Otacon and learns the Russian forces aboard are led by Sergei Galerkovich, a former GRU colonel and known associate of Revolver Ocelot following the Shadow Moses incident. Galerkovich's presence reframes this mission. This isn't just rogue Russian mercenaries, this is a calculated operation tied to the post-Shadow Moses fallout. The Russians want Metal Gear, but now the Marines have it. And the army may also be involved. What was meant to be a clean infiltration has become a geopolitical minefield. Otacon then reveals a critical detail. The intel about the new Metal Gear didn't come from their usual hacking networks. It came from an anonymous tip, signed EE. Otacon admits that this name immediately caught his attention. EE was the nickname he gave his estranged stepsister, Emma Emmerich, who he hasn't spoken to in 10 years. Unsure whether it was coincidence or a trap, Otacon hacked into the Pentagon's system to verify the information. This is apparently deeply out of character for him, considering Otacon is cautious by nature and skeptical of anonymous sources. Yet, this time, something personal overrode his judgment. He wanted it to be his sister, or at least he couldn't ignore the possibility that it could be. Which raises another terrifying possibility. If they were manipulated into this mission from the beginning, then it may never have been their operation at all. Entering the lower parts of the ship, this is where I found out that enemies can spot you by seeing your feet. You'd think this would be annoying, considering games nowadays condition you to think you're invisible when you're behind cover, but I kinda wish more games would do this. It forces you to think carefully about positioning, instead of just relying on the system to protect you. In the engine room, Snake is startled by a shadow, of all things.
Raven.
But no, it's just an action figure of Vulcan Raven, a promotional tie-in for the real toy that was released by McFarlane Toys. Was there any point in me mentioning this? No, not really, but it's just very cool. But to break the comedic tone of what just happened, we open a locker to find a very dead body. Before turning himself into mulch, Otacon warns Snake about another set of explosives. This time, there's an alternative solution. Small consoles around the room control the explosives. Destroying them would disable the bombs entirely. And with the fancy new first-person camera, this is a cakewalk. Even deeper in the ship, more Russian soldiers appear. Oh, they're like goddamn ants. And I hate ants, so they all have to die. And after enough have been squashed, look who shows up. Motherfucking Revolver Ocelot.
The Colonel will be joining you soon, comrade.
Well, okay then. Snake reaches the holds of the tanker and confirms that the ship has already passed the Verrazano Bridge. At this point, the tanker is moving into open water, far beyond the point where anyone could easily intervene. Snake immediately realizes something is wrong. The deck exits are sealed, suggesting that the ship has changed course. Something suspicious is underway. Below deck, a group of Marines are gathered around a projected speech from the Marine commander, apparently unaware that the tanker has been infiltrated. Not only would combat be completely ineffective in such a confined space, but these Marines clearly have no idea that they're part of something bigger. Metal Gear itself isn't visible yet, so Snake moves towards the bow of the ship, where security appears to be the tightest. As he does, Otacon reiterates the mission. They're not here to destroy the Metal Gear, they need to just expose it. We need to snap 4 photographs of the mech, one from the front right, the front left, and a close-up of the Marine's insignia. That final detail is important, because it directly links the weapon to the US military, making denial impossible. Then comes a little twist. Otacon detects someone is monitoring their codec transmissions, but whoever it is isn't interfering, they're just watching, which is worse. Snake suspects that it may be connected to the Cypher drone he saw earlier. For the first time during the mission, Snake and Otacon realise that they may not be the only observers. But to counter the peeping toms, Otacon devises a workaround. Instead of transmitting the photos through the codec, Snake will upload them using a nearby workstation. Otacon has managed to infiltrate the US military's proprietary Link 16 network and installed a custom application. The photos will be automatically downloaded, split into encrypted packets, and disguised as normal military data traffic. What a shocker, the genius came up with a genius idea. If this wasn't stressful enough, Snake is given a 7-minute time limit. Once the commander's speech ends, the Marines will disperse, and Snake will be completely exposed. This is an awesome narrative piece. The Marines are likely distracted by rhetoric, while Snake seeks truth behind the curtain. Bam! Picture 1 taken. Bam! Picture 2 taken. Bam! Picture 3 taken. Bam! Picture 4 taken. Now it's just time for Otacon to judge my photography skills.
You're a pretty good photographer.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Just as the commander finishes his speech, Ocelot finally makes his move. He interrupts the speech with a dramatic entrance, which will soon become his, entire personality. Anyway, he mocks the Marines for loving the sound of their own voice more than the truth. Then, Galurkovich reveals himself, taking the Marine commandant hostage while Russian soldiers repel into the hold. Ocelot announces to the crew that the ship has been rigged with Semtex. The entire tanker can be destroyed with the press of a button. And Galurkovich frames the hijacking as an act of nationalist revenge. Raised in, apologies if I get this pronunciation wrong, Snezhinsk, a former Soviet nuclear research city, he sees post-Cold War Russia as humiliated and exploited by the United States. To him, Metal Gear Ray represents stolen Russian technological legacy. But Ocelot dismantles that idea immediately. Apparently, he was never truly working for Galurkovich, and he didn't come to steal Ray, he came to take it back, in his words. To take it back to the Patriots. When the Marine commander hears the name, the Lalelulelo, panic flashes across his face. The conspiracy behind global politics is no longer a rumour, it's real. Ocelot then kills both Galurkovich and his men like the dramatic badass he is. And to keep on that theme, he detonates the explosives, blowing open the hull of the ship, and the tanker begins to sink as Ocelot climbs into Metal Gear Ray. Snake does confront him, but something is wrong. Ocelot's arm begins to convulse and his voice changes.
It's been a while, brother.
What the fuck?
You.
If you remember, during the Shadow Moses incident, Ocelot got his arm sliced off by Grey Fox very early in that mission. The replacement arm came from Liquid Snake, and through the transplanted arm, Liquid's consciousness manifests, seemingly overpowering Ocelot's will. Because why the fuck not? Ocelot, or Liquid, commandeers Ray and attacks the tanker, declaring Snake will go down with it. This, I think, is a good moment to explain what Ray actually is. As we already know, Metal Gear Ray is an anti-Metal Gear weapon. It can operate underwater, launch from submarines, and is capable of beach landings. But getting onto cooler things like weapons, its primary weapon is a high-pressure water cutter capable of slicing through steel. Of course, it also has missile launchers and machine guns, but those aren't as cool. As Ocelot escapes with Ray, he contacts an unknown geezer. He confirms several things. For one, the operation succeeded. Secondly, Snake was photographed at the scene. Thirdly, the Marine Corps program will be discredited. And the person on the other end of the call...
Yes, of course, Mr. President.
The game then presents us with a quote. At this point, it doesn't mean much, but trust me, it will. It's gonna mean so much. 2 years after the tanker disaster in Manhattan Harbor, the massive offshore cleanup facility known as the Big Shell has been seized by terrorists. The structure was built to contain and decontaminate the spill caused by the tanker's sinking, but has now become the center of a new crisis. The attackers identify themselves as Dead Cell, a rogue unit made up of former Navy SEAL anti-terror specialists, possibly supported by a Russian private military force. This is the situation as we know it. The terrorists are demanding $30 billion US. Hostages include several VIPs, most critically, President James Johnson, who was touring the facility. And if their demands are not met, they threaten to destroy the Big Shell entirely. If this happens, the consequences would be catastrophic. The stored crude oil would ignite, turning Manhattan Harbor into a massive inferno. Even worse, the chemicals used to clean the spill could react with the oil and release huge amount of dioxins, creating an environmental disaster capable of destroying the bay's ecosystem for centuries. So, our operation is fairly simple. Infiltrate the facility through the water, rescue the president and the hostages, and neutralize the terrorists. Yeah, alright, sounds easy enough. However, when we arrive, something is already wrong. There's a hole cut into the oil fence surrounding the facility. Someone else has already infiltrated the Big Shell. Whilst SEAL Team 10 is conducting the official rescue operation, Foxhound's mission remains covert. The operative must not reveal his presence. You might have picked up on the fact that I referred to the player character as the operative, and that's because the game initially tries to convince you that this is Snake. But take just one listen to this guy's voice.
This is Snake. I'm now inside Strut A of Shell 1.
Yeah, bro, you're not convincing me. Campbell quickly drops the act to maintain operational secrecy. The Colonel changes the operative's codename from Snake to Raiden. Raiden explains that he has completed over 300 VR training missions, suggesting that despite his confidence, he has no real combat experience. Which means this is his first real mission. And yes, I will come back to why that matters. He's wearing a suit called the Skull Suit, which integrates directly with the nanomachines in his bloodstream and gives him several advantages, like protection against toxic substances, built-in sensors, damage monitoring, blood loss detection, and pressure systems designed to enhance performance. Once you start playing as Raiden, you'll immediately notice he moves differently from Snake. For example, instead of the classic dive roll, he performs a cartwheel flip. Raiden also introduces a few new stealth options that weren't present in the first game. You can now grab enemies and drag their bodies into the shadows, or hide them inside of lockers, or quietly choke them out and move them somewhere safer. It's a small addition, but it gives you far more control over how you manage enemy patrols. The AI itself is also much smarter this time around. Guards can no longer just simply disappear once they've been taken out. If someone goes missing, their commander will eventually send another soldier to investigate or replace them. The patrol routes are constantly being maintained, which makes the stealth feel far more dynamic than the first game. When MGS 2 launched in 2001, players expected another mission starring Solid Snake. He was everywhere in the marketing. The E3 demo, the trailers, the magazine previews, everything suggested that this would be another Snake adventure. Then, suddenly, 2 hours in, Snake disappears, and the player is handed control of Raiden, a younger, emotional soldier who idolizes Snake. The backlash for this change was immediate. A lot of players were furious, but this was exactly what Hideo Kojima intended. Raiden was designed as a player surrogate. Both Raiden and the player idolize Snake, and both are suddenly forced into the uncomfortable position of realizing they aren't Solid Snake. This idea, honestly, in my opinion, was genius. I obviously can't speak on it like I know what it was like when it came out, but I have to assume there's players out there who hated it at first, but have now come to love the change. Shortly after arriving, Raiden discovers something strange. 2 soldiers lie unconscious, taken down by a skilled, unknown intruder. So, Raiden contacts the Colonel, but he says, "Nah, that's not possible." "Okay, fuck you then, Colonel." Rather than investigate further, the Colonel redirects Raiden to focus on procedure, and in front of the elevator sits a node terminal.
Did you say nerd?
These terminals connect Raiden to the Big Shell's internal network. Activating the node grants access to the radar system. Unlike the first game, your radar isn't available upon starting. You must activate nodes throughout the facility to restore it in each section. The Colonel then introduces us to the mission analyst, Rosemary, or Rose, who is also Raiden's girlfriend. Apparently she replaced the original Foxhound analyst after he was injured. This frustrates Raiden because Rose has no field experience, but the Colonel insists that her presence is important. Also, Raiden, you don't have any field experience. Anyway, Rose is here because she understands Raiden better than anyone else, and she makes it clear that she prioritizes Jack's safety over the mission, which immediately establishes tension between her and the Colonel. And yes, Raiden's name is Jack. As the frequency switches to Rose's private line, which is also the frequency for saving the game, the tone shifts again. Rose reminds Raiden of something important. Tomorrow is April 30th.
April 30th.
Trying to remember what's so special about April 30th. You mean April 30th?
You know what day it is today.
April 30th?
But Raiden doesn't remember why that date matters. Both the war and his training have clearly pushed his personal life into the background. But we don't get time to dwell on that. The soldiers are waking up, and them seeing us would be very bad. So we hide behind some barrels until it's safe to escape via the elevator. And it's in this elevator where Raiden takes off his mask and we see his face for the first time. Long white hair, pale skin, and quite feminine features, slightly reminiscent of Griffith from Berserk. Then the next bombshell drops. The terrorists call themselves the Sons of Liberty, and their leader is Solid Snake.
The hero of Shadow Moses? So that's why you changed my code name.
But the Colonel confirms that it can't be that Solid Snake, because Snake died in a tanker incident 2 years ago. But he says it almost too confidently, like it's rehearsed. But now on the roof of Strut A, Raiden learns that SEAL Team 10 has landed nearby and reportedly located the president. But as we know, Raiden operates secretly. Not even the SEALs know he is here. Out on the AB connecting bridge, Raiden spots 2 guards and contacts the Colonel. And this is where the game introduces the hanging mode. By running toward a railing and pressing triangle, Raiden can jump over and hang from the ledge. It's again a simple mechanic, but it massively expands the level design. The Colonel manages to intercept SEAL communications and finds out that the team has successfully secured the president. But suddenly, gunfire erupts and the transmission cuts out. Whoever knocked out those earlier guards has now attacked the SEALs, and Raiden is immediately ordered to strut B. And it's not long until we find the massacre that we heard over the radio. Turning the corner, our eyeballs are punched in the face by Hallway Massacre version 2. The game then cuts to a trio of soldiers, but if we know anything by playing video games, these soldiers aren't going to be alive for long. Who the fuck was that? Oh wait, I can actually tell you. That, my friends, would be Vamp. He's a member of Dead Cell, the rogue special forces unit helping the Sons of Liberty seize the Big Shell. Vamp was born in Romania and survived the bombing of his church during the Balkan conflicts. As a child, he was trapped beneath rubble beside bodies of his dead family, surviving by drinking their blood. Because of this, death became something deeply personal to him. He's fascinated by it. In combat, Vamp is terrifying. He's an expert knife fighter with incredible agility and the ability to run along walls, and because this is Metal Gear, he can also run across water and survive injuries that would kill a normal person. Before Vamp can turn Raiden into sashimi, he is saved by a very well-known unknown soldier. But Vamp won't have that disrespect, and he ambushes our new bestie, disarms him, and slams him into a wall with ridiculous strength. But thankfully, the gun that the soldier dropped lands right next to Raiden, so he picks it up and opens fire. Unfortunately for us and Raiden though, Vamp dodges every shot with a ridiculous spin move before receiving a call from someone he calls Queen. And just like that, he disappears. What the fuck is happening in this game? Oh, and the mysterious soldier? Yeah, that's Snake. But anyone who has played the game figured this out from the moment he spoke. He introduces himself as Iroquois Pliskin, and if that name sounds familiar, it's because it's a reference to Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. Kojima has never exactly been subtle about his influences, but to keep things simple, I will refer to him as Pliskin when necessary. Pliskin immediately recognises Raiden as Foxhound, which raises some questions because Foxhound was officially disbanded. He asks Raiden whether he's with Delta Force, no, not that one, and if he has any real field experience. Raiden reveals the truth. He's never fought in an actual war. He does go on to list his performance stats in VR training, but Pliskin dismisses him. He calls Raiden a virtual grunt of the digital age. VR simulations can replicate tactics and environments, but they can't replicate the true chaos of war. In VR, nobody really dies, but Raiden insists that the simulations include pain feedback and urgency. The only difference is that it just isn't real. And Pliskin responds with one of the most meta lines of the entire game.
War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
It does just sound like a throwaway comedy line, but it quietly hints at something much bigger. If soldiers can be trained through simulations, then maybe reality itself can be simulated as well. And if someone controls the simulation, they do also control the outcome. He implies that VR may not simply be training, it may be a way to psychologically condition soldiers, stripping away hesitation and fear while creating controllable operatives. The Colonel interrupts this conversation over codec. Raiden reports the massacre and confirms that Pliskin is the only survivor. The Colonel's immediate concern isn't the massacre itself, but the mission's secrecy.
Has he seen your face?
Raiden replies that it's already way too late for that, and the convo is cut short. Pliskin shows Raiden the body of a Navy captain killed by Vamp. The man's handcuffs are broken, suggesting incredible strength was used. This then leads into more information about Dead Cell. The unit was originally created by former President George Sears as an anti-terror special forces team. Their role was unusual. They staged simulated terrorist attacks against US facilities in order to train soldiers for real crises. But after their leader died in prison, the unit became unstable. Their simulated attacks turned into real ones, and civilian casualties began mounting. Over 100 people died in so-called accidents. 6 months before the Big Shell incident, the group was nearly destroyed, and now only 3 mercenaries remain, Vamp being one of them. Raiden raises the issue of Dead Cell's leader, the man claiming to be Solid Snake, but Snake firmly states that Snake died during the tanker incident. Raiden struggles with the idea that such a legendary soldier and hero could be dead. But don't worry, Raiden, I'm sure he's somewhere. Pliskin disagrees. According to him, there isn't much difference between heroes and madmen. Moving the conversation forward, Raiden mentions seeing Russian equipment, and Pliskin confirms Dead Cell likely recruited former Soviet soldiers, because 3 operatives alone couldn't possibly control the entire facility. He also questions why Raiden was sent in alone and why he seems so poorly briefed. Raiden refuses to answer, which only increases Pliskin's suspicions. This causes the distrust between the two, but don't worry, they'll be besties soon enough. Pliskin offers Raiden his cigarettes, which he refuses because he doesn't smoke, but Pliskin insists that they might be useful, and he also gives Raiden his SOCOM. Suddenly, a distress call comes through from the BC connecting bridge. Heavy gunfire fills the transmission as a SEAL reports that he can't hit this thing. Then, the signal cuts out with an explosion. Since Pliskin is still bleeding from Vamp's attack, he tells Raiden to investigate while staying in contact on frequency 141.80. From this point forward, Snake effectively becomes Raiden's field support, offering tactical advice and information throughout the mission. As he's leaving, Pliskin asks Raiden his name, which he gives. Pliskin pauses because it's a weird name. Right, and Snake isn't? Better yet, Iroquois Pliskin isn't? But Raiden explains that it replaces the boring name his parents gave him.
Maybe I'll find out someday.
The moment carries some layered meaning in identity and the hidden history Raiden himself does not yet fully understand. As soon as we leave the room, Rose radios. Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier that the first few hours of this game are almost completely spent in radio calls or cutscenes. Anyway, Rose starts by reminding us to save the game, which actually is very helpful. Thank you, Rose. But immediately after that, she asks Raiden about April 30th again. He still doesn't remember, and honestly, he has bigger problems to worry about right now. Rose seems hurt that he forgot, but refuses to explain why the date matters. Typical. Raiden responds the only way he knows how, by focusing on the mission. He promises he'll finish the operation by tomorrow, almost like completing the mission is his last item on a checklist before he can deal with his personal life. The conversation then shifts back to operational business. Raiden requests that Rose gather classified data on Solid Snake, and this reinforces 2 important tensions. First is the identity crisis. The terrorist leader claims to be Solid Snake, raising the possibility that Snake survived the tanker incident, which directly contradicts the official story. Second is information control. Rose needs top-level clearance from the Colonel just to access Snake's records, showing us exactly how tightly information about figures like Snake is controlled. This cutscene does a really good job in building emotional tension between both Jack and Rose, and reinforces the detachment from his personal life. Now on the Strut BC connecting bridge, we see the soldiers that radioed the distress call, still shooting at the enemy. We can see that not a single bullet can hit her. This is Fortune, also known as Lady Luck. She's the leader of Dead Cell, and her reputation comes from her apparent ability to avoid any form of damage. Combined with a tragic loss in her life, this gift has given her a fatalistic worldview centered on revenge. Oh, and she carries a railgun.
Is there anyone here that can give me happiness?
This cutscene also gives us the best line ever spoken in a Metal Gear game.
Ready grenades!
A dud!
I love that line delivery so much.
A dud!
Oh, and the president is here too. That's why the SEAL team fought so hard on this bridge. But Vamp quickly removes him from the equation. After eliminating everyone on the bridge and even accidentally killing a seagull, Fortune walks away. We're not going to see her again for a while. Raiden reports the situation to the Colonel. He asks about the cargo helicopters, but the Colonel confirms that they've already been shot down. The terrorists have their hands on a Harrier jet. The Colonel reframes the failed SEAL assault as strategically useful. Their attack distracted the enemy long enough for Raiden to infiltrate unnoticed, while also revealing the enemy's strength. But with the SEAL team eliminated, the mission now rests entirely on Raiden. Worse still, the terrorists may retaliate by killing hostages, or by detonating explosives planted throughout the big shell. Preventing an environmental disaster now becomes the top priority. So, Raiden is reassigned to bomb disposal. He must find and disarm the C4 planted around the big shell. He protests because he isn't a bomb disposal expert, but the Colonel lets us know that Bravo team brought in a specialist, someone stationed in Strut C, which does create some grim irony. The wiped out SEAL team now exists only as a resource to be scavenged. Even in death, they're treated like mission assets. During the conversation, Raiden's psychological stress becomes more obvious. After encountering Fortune and Vamp, he describes the situation as a nightmare that he can't wake up from. When Rose tries to comfort him, Raiden briefly turns his suspicion toward her as well. To ground him though, Rose says that whether the mission is real or not, she will keep watching over him until it's finished. Moving on, Metal Gear Solid 2 also has functioning mirrors, which today sounds like a strange thing to praise, but remember, this game came out in 2001. True mirrors require the game to render the entire scene twice simultaneously, once from the player's camera and again from the reflected perspective. Doing that on PlayStation 2 hardware is so fucking impressive. And of course, because this is Kojima, the mirror also ties into the game's themes of identity and self-perception. Mirror rant aside, Raiden enters the Strut C kitchen and finds a man in an NYPD jacket kneeling beside a counter. At first, Raiden assumes he's an enemy, but Pliskin intervenes, identifying the man as an ally. He then introduces himself as Peter Stillman, a legendary bomb disposal expert and former instructor at the Navy's Explosive Ordnance Disposal School at Indian Head. He is voiced by Greg Eagles, the same actor who played both Donald Anderson and Grey Fox in the first game. Stillman's name is also a reference to the protagonist of the novel City of Glass, part of Paul Auster's New York trilogy. Originally, Kojima planned to reference more characters from those books, but most of those were ultimately cut. The connection remained because the novels share several thematic similarities with MGS2. Anyway, Stillman tells us that he was called out of retirement for this mission because one of the terrorists is an ex-student. This ex-student is Fat Man, a self-proclaimed emperor of explosives. Stillman describes Fat Man as a prodigy, someone who allegedly built an atomic bomb at the age of 10. He's obsessed with aesthetics and personal flair, and he always leaves traces of his cologne on his bombs as a signature. Stillman admits that he treated Fat Man almost like a son. He had no children of his own, and invested deeply in his students' potential. But he now recognizes his failure, because he never taught him restraint or responsibility. This confession adds emotional weight to the mission. It's a teacher confronting the consequences of what he himself has passed on. Stillman's words make it clear that demolition is, in his mind, kinda philosophical. Fat Man's bombing plan isn't random chaos like Heath Ledger's Joker, it's intentional and based directly on Stillman's own theories. Like Batman if he blew things up. Stillman predicts that Fat Man is using his big brain to place the C4 at the struts, which would very efficiently collapse the big shell. Using this logic, Stillman predicts that there's 12 bombs in total, 6 per shell, and because the SEAL squad is dead, Raiden and Pliskin need to handle the bomb defusal themselves. Because of Raiden's inexperience, Stillman gives us a lesson on defusal. He says dismantling the C4 would be too dangerous and take way too long, so he gives Raiden and Pliskin a coolant spray. Spraying a C4 with this will freeze its detonator, and once frozen, the bomb no longer can detonate for at least 24 hours. This is great, but it still adds some tension considering this is only a temporary solution. This doesn't get rid of our problem, it just delays it. Stillman also gives us a scent sensor tuned specifically to detect Fat Man's cologne signature. With this equipped, the radar displays a yellow cloud in the general area of a bomb. However, this only works when your radar is on, which shuts off if you're spotted. So even though stealth is always important, it is now even more important than ever. Stillman mentions an unidentified engineer who accompanied the SEALs and possessed security clearance cards. He provides Raiden with a level 1 card and Pliskin with a level 3 card. Hey, fuck you, I want that one. But back to the engineer quickly. He's missing. His body wasn't found. But the Colonel claims absolutely zero knowledge of the geezer, creating early doubt in Raiden about mission transparency. This subtle contradiction introduces the first cracks in Raiden's understanding of the operation. After Pliskin leaves to handle Shell 2, Stillman grows suspicious of him, noting that his language and behaviour don't match standard Navy SEAL protocol, citing phrases like
Semper Fi. Who dares, wins.
as inconsistent with SEAL traditions. However, he ultimately shifts suspicion towards Raiden instead.
If there's someone to suspect, I'd put my money on you.
Stillman chooses to remain behind, hiding in a pantry while guiding Raiden via codec. Before closing the door, he gives Raiden one final warning.
Bomb disposal is a face-off with your own mortality. Don't let the fear get to you. When you give in to the fear, the darkness comes.
With this, we spend the next big chunk of the mission searching the big shell for Fat Man's explosives. Just after defusing the first bomb, Raiden reports the successful defusal to Stillman. But when he mentions the bomb's location, Stillman becomes suspicious. He says Pliskin has also reported some very odd locations for the bombs, and none of them are effective demolition points. Raiden suggests that the terrorists aren't planning on destroying the big shell, which Stillman accepts as a theory. He still knows that Fat Man knows he would be here, so there has to be something he's not understanding. Going back outside for some fresh air to the EF connecting bridge, Raiden receives a mysterious call. Someone warns him about invisible bombs and tells him to use the mine detector. Who is this mysterious person, you ask? Well, they call themselves Deep Throat.
Just invisible to the naked eye.
Deep Throat?
Use the mine detector.
Identify yourself.
You're dead.
Just call me Deep Throat.
What the fuck? It is Deep Throat.
I've got nothing else to say, really. I can't explain this to you without massive spoilers, so I'm just going to move on. Raiden reports this to the Colonel, who immediately dismisses the idea that the caller could be Grey Fox. Which, I mean, yeah, makes sense. We literally watched him die. Rose briefly contacts us and recalls how she and Raiden first met in New York, highlighting the tension between his mission and his personal life. It's quite a nice dialogue moment, but again, I have greater things to worry about right now. Later, on the heliport, Raiden overhears Olga speaking over the radio. Yes, that Olga from the tanker. The first thing we hear her say is the mention of a cyborg ninja. What the fuck? Wait, is Grey Fox really alive? Naturally, the man on the other end assumes that she's just mistaken, but she says, no, I know what I saw. Then another report comes in. Someone hiding inside a cardboard box. The man on the other end says he's seen someone use that trick before. So have I, actually. Well, no, I was the one doing the hiding, both in the first game and actually this one as well. Snake later clarifies info on Olga, but I'm going to tell you now. She is not part of Dead Cell. Olga is now commanding the remaining Galurkovich soldiers, which means that there's yet another faction operating inside the big shell. So now that counts 3 factions. Well, maybe 2, considering the SEALs are dead. When Raiden confronts Olga, she simply flips over the railing and disappears. She's done some pretty extensive training since the tanker encounter. After freezing a C4 charge that sits underneath a fighter jet on the helipad, Raiden contacts Stillman once again. But the situation escalates immediately. Pliskin reports discovering an enormous stockpile of C4 beneath Strut H. These newly discovered bombs are the real threat and could cause catastrophic structural damage. Unlike Fat Man's earlier devices, these charges are sealed to prevent vapor leaks. There's no scent trace, no detectable signature, meaning Fat Man has outsmarted his former mentor. The conversation then turns deeply personal. Stillman insists on personally handing the newly discovered bomb. Raiden objects, pointing out Stillman's apparent disability, but in a shocking confession, Stillman reveals that his injured leg is a lie. 5 years earlier, he failed to prevent a bombing that destroyed a church, killing children. Though he survived unharmed, he pretended to have lost a leg in the explosion to shield himself from public condemnation and from facing the victims' families. He allowed others to see him as a fellow victim rather than the man whose mistake cost lives. His prosthetic limp became a psychological crutch, a way to hide from guilt. And he admits that by playing the victim, he avoided accountability and, quote, killed his soul. Teaching Fat Man bomb disposal skills without properly confronting his own moral failings now feels like another grave mistake. In his eyes, Fat Man's crimes are partially his responsibility. I maybe wouldn't say partially, but determined to atone, Stillman declares that stopping Fat Man himself is the only way to diffuse his own sins. Pliskin and Raiden accept this decision, and Pliskin clears guards from Shell 2 to give him a safer path. And with that, Stillman heads out. One final bomb remains inside the sediment pool in Strut D. In this room, you'll notice some floor hatches, and if you head downstairs and open the correct one, you will see a fat-ass explosive. After freezing, Raiden contacts Stillman again, and Stillman reveals that he is staring at the massive C4 pile. But he also believes that there may be another hidden stockpile of C4 somewhere in Shell 1. To detect it, he introduces a new scanning tool which combines a neutron scintillator with a hydrogen bomb detector. Instead of radar, it works through audio beeping. The faster the sound, the closer to the bomb. He tells Raiden that there's another sensor unit stored in the pantry and instructs him to retrieve it. Oh hey look, it's that new detection device. After picking it up, Stillman radios and instructs Raiden to head immediately to the bottom of Strut A to find Big Bomb number 2. He explains that the invisible bomb he's examining is unusual. Its detonator hasn't been manually activated, yet its internal sensors are live, which suggests that it's linked to something else. Meanwhile, Pliskin reports that he has reached the final C4 charge and is about to freeze it. After hearing this, Stillman suddenly realizes the danger and tries to stop him, but it's too late. The moment Pliskin freezes the last small bomb, an alarm begins blaring on Stillman's end. The horrifying truth becomes clear to all of us. The large bombs were rigged to activate automatically once the smaller C4 bombs were disabled. With the big bombs activated and 5 minutes until explosion, we gotta get the fuck off of Strut A. On Strut A's elevator, Stillman radios once again and opens the conversation telling us that he's been outplayed. Fat Man anticipated Stillman's methods and rigged the bomb with a microwave-based proximity trigger that activates within a 7-foot radius. This fictional mechanism detects nearby movement using microwave sensors, triggering the device if someone gets too close. Stillman explains that the moment he approached the bomb, the trigger armed itself, so there's no way to escape. He orders Pliskin to retreat from Strut H immediately and instructs Raiden to keep his distance while attempting to freeze the bomb. Before anything more can be said, the bomb detonates. Stillman screams as the transmission cuts off. R.I.P. Peter Stillman. You were a character that I didn't really care about, but it still sucks that you died. The final bomb is located beneath the submarine in the very first area that we explored. After freezing it, Raiden reports back to the Colonel, and we find out that the explosion caused significant structural damage to Shell 2, flooding its central section and igniting an oil slick on the surface. However, the toxic chemicals remain contained, and Shell 1 is unaffected. With the bomb threat temporarily taken care of, Raiden reverts back to his previous objective to rescue President Johnson. Almost immediately after finishing this conversation, the terrorists retaliate by executing a hostage on the roof, and they broadcast the killing via satellite. as well as threatening to kill one hostage every hour. Despite Raiden's anger and desire to save everyone, the Colonel insists that rescuing the President remains the top priority. He questions why he can't rely on Pliskin, but the Colonel coldly states that the mission must remain a solo effort and that Pliskin was not part of the, quote, simulation. Pushing forward, we come face to face with Fortune and her massive railgun. She confronts Raiden, believing him to be responsible for her father's death, for some reason. She demands that he kill her so she can reunite with her father. This might look like a boss fight, but it isn't. Because of Fortune's previous cutscene, we already know that bullets cannot hit her, so there is no fight here, just a waiting game. Mid-fight, the Colonel radios. Fat Man has contacted them directly. He claims another bomb has been placed on the heliport and demands Raiden be the one to disarm it. Oh, and the countdown has already begun. We have 400 seconds until it explodes. Great. All of a sudden, Vamp arrives, looking as prissy as ever. He criticizes Fat Man for losing sight of Dead Cell's ideals, suggesting that the new bomb threatens their larger plan. And as Fortune leaves, Raiden takes 2 more shots, and these bullets are deflected straight into Vamp. One hits his lower torso, and the other goes straight to the dome. This seemingly kills him. Or does it? Yeah, he's dead. Or is he? This apparent death upsets Fortune very much. She's once again lost another person who she was close with, yet she still lives.
No. No, that death was meant for me. Why am I the only one that can't die?
Her grief isn't just about Vamp, it's about herself. Once again, she's completely alone, and she invokes her father.
How long will you force me to live? How much longer, Dad?
Okay, bye.
There's no need for sorrow, Queen. I died once already.
Vamp.
I can't die twice.
And just like that, even death is unstable. Fortune can't be killed, Vamp apparently can't die either, so all in all, a pretty shit situation. But right, let's lock in and get this bomb sorted out. Oh, look at that, it's Fat Man. What's up, dude? This entire encounter plays out like a theatrical performance. Fat Man greets Raiden almost politely, praising his punctuality like they've just met for brunch. The constant ticking of the bombs in the background becomes part of his performance, and he romanticizes the sound, calling it the rhythm of time and life. For Fat Man, if you couldn't already tell, bombs are not just big boomy things, they're some sort of philosophical statement. They announce their own end, like drama queens, which Fat Man himself is. His appearance reinforces his freaky ass. He emerges on fucking rollerblades of all things, wearing a massive bomb suit and casually drinking red wine through a goddamn straw. Honestly, that's a pretty baller move, I can't lie. Raiden assumes that the terrorists are motivated by the $30 billion ransom, but Fat Man's laughter makes it clear that he either doesn't know or doesn't care about the larger scheme. His ambitions are entirely personal. He just wants Big Boom, and some fame, of course. Specifically, he wants to be remembered as the man who surpassed Peter Stillman. When Raiden calls Stillman courageous, Fat Man snaps. He smashes his wine glass and declares himself an artiste. The confrontation then shifts to a game, and Fat Man lays out his rules. He will plant bombs, they will explode, and if Raiden wishes not to explode, he needs to disable them. And with enough bullets to the skull, Fat Man will go down. With blood seeping through his bomb suit, he mutters about having nothing to wear to the party. When Raiden approaches, Fat Man activates one final device. He calmly explains that the device has activated the largest bomb in the entire facility. According to him, once triggered, the countdown cannot be stopped. Refusing to give a clear location, Fat Man taunts Raiden, claiming the bomb is somewhere nearby and is enough to destroy the entire big shell. He frames this as the climax of his party, the ultimate spectacle that will cement his legend. He thinks dying here is immortality, and believes history will remember him as an artist of destruction. His words, not mine. Fat Man dies with his signature line.
Laugh and grow fat.
leaving Raiden with seconds to act. Don't worry though, just move Fat Man a little and you'll find the bomb. Yeah, it was strapped to him the entire time. With the threat neutralised, the Colonel returns to the line, and Raiden notes that Fat Man seemed unaware of the terrorists' ransom demands. The Colonel suggests that Fat Man was intentionally kept in the dark, implying divisions within even the enemy group. But the mission isn't over. The President is still missing, and Raiden's new mission is clear. Find that mofo. And Raiden's new old mission is clear. Find that mofo. So, we go back to trying to find him. Immediately after this codec call, we receive another codec call from Pliskin. He survived the explosion in Shell 2, though he was unconscious for a time and needed help from a mysterious friend. They discuss the condition of the facility. Shell 2 has been heavily damaged, particularly in Strut H, and the central core is flooding. Time is becoming a major factor, and Raiden brings up the potential release of toxins if the big shell were to explode. But Pliskin has never heard anything about such a risk. This contradiction raises, again, more questions about the accuracy of Raiden's briefing and hints that he may not have been given the full truth. They go on to assess extraction options. The hostages are likely being held in Shell 1, and swimming to Manhattan is impossible due to the distance. There's also no visible lifeboats, which Pliskin notes is suspicious. A helicopter extraction is the only viable plan. But with roughly 30 hostages and limited passenger capacity, multiple trips would be required. Pliskin admits that he cannot pilot a helicopter himself, but reveals that he brought along a skilled mechanic, who we already know as Otacon. Raiden, standing on the heliport, observes that the enemy Harrier jet is currently absent. This creates a narrow tactical window. If they move quickly, they might avoid facing the aircraft in the air. Pliskin agrees. If the Harrier engages them mid-extraction, their chances of survival are pretty much fuck all. The exchange ends on a revealing note. When Raiden emphasizes that rescuing the President is a top priority, Pliskin responds with this.
Your orders, not mine. What?
This highlights the growing difference between Raiden and Pliskin. Raiden is still tightly bound to command's orders and mission parameters like a chud. Pliskin, by contrast, operates outside that framework, like a gigachad. I mean, Raiden would rather play with Fat Man's body anyway. As we go to leave, guess who shows up?
You passed with flying colors.
What the actual shit? Don't worry though, as soon as the ninja speaks, you can tell it's not Grey Fox. Just an imitation. The ninja cryptically congratulates Raiden for passing, immediately framing Raiden's mission as some kind of test or evaluation. The ninja then identifies himself only ambiguously.
I'm like you, I have no name.
But allows Raiden to call him Mr. X. This is the wrong franchise for that, bro. He claims to be neither ally nor enemy, but a messenger of the Lale Lule Lo, reinforcing the sense of unseen forces manipulating events behind the scenes. To avoid surveillance, he switches communication to codec, suggesting Raiden is being monitored more closely than he realizes. Mr. X provides Raiden with his first actionable lead. The President's location can be discovered through a Secret Service agent named Ames, who is being held hostage in the Shell 1 Core B1 conference room. Ames shares the same VIP nanomachine system as the President, meaning Raiden should be able to communicate with him if he gets close enough to give him a forehead kiss. However, neither of them knows what the hell this guy looks like. So, to figure out who this geezer is, Raiden must find and use a directional microphone to detect the faint rhythm of Ames's pacemaker in a big-ass group of hostages. I can't wait, that sounds fucking amazing. Because he's awesome, Mr. X hands Raiden a charcuterie board of stuff. A level 2 keycard, a BDU uniform to disguise ourselves, the knowledge that we have to carry an AK so the guards don't see our disguise, and a warning that we'll need to bypass retinal scanners to get where we need to go. Okay, great, that sounds really fucking hard, but I'm sure it's gonna be fine. He then tells us some horrible news. The terrorists have both a nuclear weapon, the launch authorization device called the football, and the launch code. And that's not all. Mr. X also reveals that the Big Shell is not merely an environmental cleanup facility. It is secretly an R&D center housing a new model of Metal Gear. Oh, okay, wow, we are so fucked. The implication is actually kinda horrible. The entire Big Shell operation is a cover story. The terrorists didn't bring a nuke, they seized one that was already present. Yet another lie about our mission. He then also gives us a phone, but doesn't actually explain why, and then just straight up disappears. So, Raiden calls the Colonel. He obviously denies any knowledge of the ninja or of a Metal Gear project within the Big Shell, yet, despite his skepticism, he orders Raiden to proceed with the Ames lead and gather intelligence. You're acting just like you were on Shadow Moses, Colonel. What are you not telling me? My thoughts exactly, Raiden. Entering the Shell 1 core, Rose calls. She tells us that she has found some more info on Solid Snake. She actually found his gravesite, but his body was apparently exhumed for DNA testing. She says his right arm was missing, but there was no doubt it was him. This finally clocks for these two that Solid Snake is in fact not leading the terrorist group. Some of you may have guessed already, but the body that they exhumed was liquid. That's why the arm is gone, because it's on Ocelot's body. This is revealed to us later, but it's really not that important, which is why I'm telling you now. Anyway, it's time to be sneaky. The AK, by the way, is in the Strut F warehouse. In the back left corner, there's a door you can now open with your level 2 keycard, and you're definitely gonna want this AK. Holding this gun while disguised, you can literally run through the Shell 1 core as fast as you want to, and not a single person will bat an eye. Run far enough and you'll come to an elevator. Get on that bitch and head downstairs. This is where the retinal scanner is, and frankly, it took me way too long to figure out what I was supposed to do. But I got it eventually with a little help from the Colonel. What you have to do is unequip your AK and smash the guard's face into the scanner. You know, just like the movies. Now in the room full of hostages, the Colonel reminds me that I haven't found the directional microphone yet. Ah, shit. So going down another floor and heading to the computer room, we can find and steal said microphone. Back in the hostage room, you know what to do. Equip the directional mic and have a listen to people's heartbeats. But remember to do this out of sight of the guard patrolling the room. And also remember to equip your AK whenever you don't have the mic equipped. Once found, Ames immediately reveals that he was sent to the Big Shell by the ever-mysterious Lalilulelo. More shocking is that Ames implies they are serving the same hidden masters. Concerned about being overheard, he suggests that we should switch to codec. Now with no one listening in, he confirms that the president was moved to the first floor of Shell 2's core, but he cannot verify if the president is still alive. However, he does insist that the terrorists won't kill him, at least not until they get his Steam password. Ames then goes off to give us some more info about the briefcase that was stolen. He claims that it's one of the most advanced biometric failsafe systems of all time, and in order to authorize a launch, you need all of this. The president's DNA signature, continuous real-time vital signs from his internal nanomachines, heartbeat and brainwave patterns within normal ranges, a conscious voluntary input, and hourly reconfirmation after the first login. Because of this, chemical coercion or physical torture would invalidate this process. The system only works if the president cooperates willingly. This is exactly why the terrorists can't harm him, at least until launch confirmation is secured. If this launch is successful, it also activates the Metal Gear hidden under the Big Shell. But here comes the real bombshell. The password entry has already been completed, which means that the president must be cooperating. Ames speculates that the president may have grown tired of being a political puppet. Before he can explain any further, he abruptly stops as someone enters the adjacent room.
Here comes Snake.
I mean, you're wrong about that, but let's see what they're saying. Using the microphone, Raiden listens in on a private meeting between the person claiming to be Solid Snake, Olga, and Ocelot. Ocelot reports Fat Man's death, but Fake Snake dismisses it as irrelevant, claiming that they would have just slimed him anyway. They discuss the flooding damage to Shell 2, security measures sealing the connecting bridge, and preparations for the final stage of their operation. Ocelot confirms the password entry into the black case is complete, and they only now need one more confirmation from the president in an hour. After that, his usefulness ends.
Only a few more steps to outer heaven.
If you don't remember, I discussed Outer Heaven in the previous game. Outer Heaven was Big Boss's dream. So now we know whoever is pretending to be Solid Snake has some sort of connection to Big Boss. Or at least enough to know about Outer Heaven. Olga confronts Ocelot over past betrayals, particularly his inaction during her father's death, and she openly threatens him. But Ocelot responds coldly, showing us that the power dynamic between them is unstable and layered with distrust. Fake Snake intervenes, reminding them that they're both political exiles and no government would officially support them, meaning that they have no safe allegiances left. After Olga storms out, Ocelot's ghost arm begins trying to take over again, but he whips out a shock rod and tells it to shut the fuck up. With time running out, Ames clarifies the terrorists' true plan. The ransom demand was a complete lie, and he goes on to explain that the real plan is to detonate a nuclear device above Manhattan. Doing this would create an electromagnetic pulse capable of disabling the entire city's electronic infrastructure. This means that the terrorists' goal is systemic collapse. They want to disable Manhattan's electronics, destabilize the global economy, and, quote-unquote, liberate the city. And that is why they call themselves the Sons of Liberty. They want to start digital warfare on a national scale. Like a goddamn ninja, Ocelot then enters the room and Ames quickly tells Raiden to retrieve a level 3 security card from his pocket and escape to Shell 2. Ocelot immediately identifies Ames as a DIA agent and claims that Ames was sent by them to monitor the president because they know he was a traitor. Ames tries exposing Ocelot's true identity, but before he can, he collapses and dies of an apparent heart attack. Sounds quite familiar. With Ames no longer relevant, Ocelot calmly pivots to Raiden, demanding to know which team he belongs to. We obviously don't know this, so one of the soldiers pulls his mask off, and Ocelot is finally face to face with Raiden. But then BAM! Fake Grey Fox appears and attempts to cut off Ocelot's hand, but he's played these games before, and knows this time to dodge the attack. Gunfire erupts, and the ninja does what Deadpool attempted to, and deflects the bullets. However, no one ever thinks about the fact that those bullets still have to go somewhere, and a few hostages are hit by said bullets. RIP to those guys, let's just have a moment of silence for them. Okay, anyway, the ninja then orders Raiden to escape, which he does, but the base goes into full alert. Before anything, Raiden reports Ames' death to the Colonel, who expresses very, very little visible emotion, but confirms that the launch confirmation is imminent, and as we know, the President may be cooperating, but will likely be slimed afterwards. The mission priority becomes crystal clear: rescue the President before the final confirmation is made. Piece of cake if you ask me. Successfully escaping to the Shell 1-2 connecting bridge, Raiden finally receives a call from Pliskin again. Thank God, I've missed your sexy voice, bro. Pliskin explains that he has been scouting the area and is currently in Strut H, but he can't access the Shell 2 core because it's infested with guards. Raiden informs him that they have finally identified the President's location and confirms that he is heading there now. Thankfully, Pliskin warns him of a serious obstacle. The bridge that we're currently on is rigged with those same tripwire bombs that Snake encountered during the tanker incident. If Raiden accidentally breaks one of the IR beams, he's going to be nothing but a cloud of meat. Like I said, us as players have already dealt with this, so we just need to find the consoles and shoot those mofos. But, unfortunately, this is nowhere near as easy as it sounds. There is so many consoles to shoot, and you're also going to need a sniper rifle to be able to do it. I shit you not, I have some sort of PTSD from this fucking moment, so I am completely just going to skip past it because I do not want to relive it in the slightest. So after successfully sniping the consoles, Raiden gets another call from Pliskin. He's managed to secure one of the enemy's Kasatskas, and he plans to use it to evacuate the hostages. He also reveals that he sabotaged the second helicopter to prevent pursuit, and casually mentions his pilot. It's revealed to us now that the pilot is Otacon. Yeah, we know, I know you know, and you know I know. But this immediately alarms Raiden, who contacts the Colonel for answers. Yeah, like that's gonna fucking work. Rose goes on to law dump Raiden about philanthropy, and Snake and Otacon's operation that led to the tanker incident, and Snake's death and yada yada yada. But Raiden refuses to accept this narrative. He argues that the man who saved Shadow Moses could not have become a terrorist. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Raiden reflects on his own mission. To survive a true sneaking mission requires something deeper. Pure will, ideals, and conviction. The kind of resolve he associates with Snake. And if Snake is truly dead, then he cannot be the mastermind orchestrating this crisis. And I quite like this, because Raiden's belief in Snake is less about the actual facts and just more about what he represents. And I think that's awesome. All this deep thought is then interrupted by this swaggerlicious geezer. This man, who claims to be a messenger from the Patriots, boldly declares himself as the boss to surpass Big Boss. He introduces himself as Solid Snake.
No, that is not Solid Snake.
Yeah, man, I know. Solid Snake is in the chopper with you right now. This is where we get a big bombshell. The mysterious man calls Pliskin his brother and reveals himself to be Solidus Snake, voiced by John Segan, another product of Los Enfants Terribles, which, if you remember, is the project that created both Liquid Snake and Solid Snake. So now we know of a third, Solidus. There is so much to talk about with Solidus, but that's for later. For now, Pliskin decides that it's time to open fire on Solidus. Unfortunately, they all miss and strike a trio of C4 instead. Through the explosion, Solidus advances, his cape burning away to reveal a full-body exoskeleton that enhances his strength and deflects incoming rounds. It's so fucking cool, dude. He boasts that he's
I'm a whole different game from Liquid.
positioning himself as the superior successor. He doesn't think of himself as just another clone, but the culmination of Big Boss's legacy. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, Solidus has a massive god complex. Oh yeah, and Vamp is back, this time in a fucking fighter jet, which Solidus has also leaped on top of, because why not? The Kasatka wouldn't be able to withstand the Harrier's firepower, so with no other option, Pliskin tosses Raiden a Stinger missile launcher and tells him that he's got to single-handedly shoot the Harrier down. This fight is honestly awesome. I mean, they all are, but I really like this one. Not only is Raiden shooting down a fighter jet with a Stinger missile, which alone is amazing, but the legacy of Big Boss has returned, and Raiden, who was initially trained in VR simulations of Snake's exploits, is now stuck in the middle of the myth. Now, for the fight itself, it's very straightforward and not very hard. It's essentially the same as the Hind D fight in the first game. You just lock onto the jet, shoot a missile, rinse and repeat until it... Bosh! Even though this is massive cause for celebration, the crash has caused even more damage to the big shell, which is not good. As the Harrier plummets, Metal Gear Ray jumps from the ocean and catches the jet in its mouth like a dog playing fetch. Honestly, it's really majestic. Ray then drops back into the sea and retaliates immediately, firing clusters of missiles, one of which sadly hits the Kasatka, and another one of which almost splatters Raiden. But thankfully he's dope as fuck and doesn't fall into the water. Or, die. Taking a look into the jet, we can see that we've given Solidus the Thor Ragnarok treatment and taken his eye. So, Solidus then orders Vamp to do some crazy shit. So he does, by leaping into the ocean and fucking running across the water. Amazing, because Vamp definitely didn't need more powers. In the aftermath, Raiden speaks privately with Pliskin, and he finally voices his suspicions that he's been building. Is he the real Snake? Yes, fucking obviously. Yeah, I know Raiden wouldn't know it, but it's a little frustrating waiting for a character to figure out something you've known for ages. But Snake deflects the idea of being a legend, just like always. To him, legends are just stories. Snake explains that he no longer fights as a government tool. He finally fights for what he believes in. Otacon then chimes in. Turns out it was them who stole Liquid's body. Pretty good plan, honestly. Everyone really did believe Snake was dead. apart from me and every single other person that's played this game. Raiden, increasingly conflicted, challenges them both. He argues that this is closer to terrorism than activism, and Otacon does admit the moral grey area, but insists that their goal is accountability and preventing humanity from repeating catastrophic mistakes. Snake frames it more personally. After spending so long hiding in Alaska, he now fights to make sure the truth survives and that the future generations inherit something better. He doesn't claim that he can change the future outright, but admits that fighting for belief is what keeps him alive. Once the call ends, Rose comes back and immediately shifts the tone to intimate. She's shaken by how close Raiden came to being turned into mush, so Raiden asks her to pray for him and to anchor him emotionally before he moves forward again. Thankfully, we can save, so we don't have to worry about death. The Colonel then butts in and quickly reasserts control. Metal Gear is active, but the situation can still be salvaged if Raiden reaches the President and prevents nuclear authorization. So all we have to do now is descend the broken railings, traverse the pipes, and approach from Strut L, which is now the only viable path to Shell 2, because everything else has been fucking blown up. Before that though, the most unsettling revelation comes. Raiden confronts the Colonel about Snake's presence, and the Colonel responds coldly by saying Snake and Otacon were never part of the, quote, simulation. That's the second time that he's said that. They're an unknown variable, he says, and Raiden explodes in frustration, rejecting the idea that this is just a simulation when real people are bleeding and dying. The Colonel dismisses Raiden's emotional reaction and refuses to engage with Snake's past, even angrily rejecting references to Shadow Moses. Essentially, he's turned into a massive prick. By the end of the sequence, the external threat has evolved into something far greater. But internally, Raiden's crisis is just as batshit crazy. He stands between competing ideologies. The legend who fights for belief, the Colonel who speaks of simulations and control, and his own growing awareness that he may be a pawn in something that has been carefully constructed. The illusion of clarity has shattered completely. Time to lock in. Let's get to Shell 2. As soon as we enter the Shell 2 core, we overhear Olga on the radio to Solidus. Solidus tells her that it's confirmed that Snake is here, and this reignites her personal vendetta. She has waited 2 years for revenge over her father's death and wants to kill him, but Solidus shuts her down. His plan and the upcoming launch take priority. This shows us more of how their alliance has fractures. Olga openly distrusts Ocelot, accusing him of abandoning her father. Solidus deflects and pushes the operation forward. In order to secure the President, Olga switches on an electrified floor. Because fuck it, why not? Oh god, I'm getting flashbacks to Arkham Asylum. Little does she know, Raiden loves getting shocked. The only way to disable the floor is from inside, by destroying a circuit panel, something that's impossible to do by hand. Sounds familiar? Olga reveals her own ambitions. Once the mission is over, she wants half of the ransom money and intends for the Galurkovich soldiers to live freely, no longer bound by hollow dreams of rebuilding Russia. Solidus reluctantly agrees. After she leaves, Raiden contacts the Colonel. He confirms the President's location, but can't approach because the floor will turn him into a French fry. The Colonel advises him to recall his Shadow Moses VR training. He should infiltrate through the ventilation ducts and use a remote-controlled missile to destroy the circuit panel. Cool, okay. I did it once before, I can do it again. Turns out though, that the floor the Nikita is on is completely flooded. I can't remember now if I mentioned it earlier, but you can swim in this game. And this section of the map is such a ball ache to get through. I honestly never really got used to the swimming controls, and constantly fucked up in this area throughout the game. You also have an oxygen bar, and because of the controls, getting to the air pockets can be so finicky that you might drown even if you're right next to one. Eventually though, you'll swim straight into the Nikita launcher. This is a massive win, and the Colonel calls to tell you what a good job you've done. As for the actual rocket controlling, it's just as hard as it was in the first game. Also, look out for the President, because he may run straight into a missile.
What are you doing?
fucking idiot. When Raiden and the president come face to face, it gets a bit unsettling. At first, the president thinks Raiden is there to assassinate him, but soon figures out that he's not. So they switch to nano-communication. He then makes a shocking confession. He really did personally input the nuclear launch codes. He thought aligning with the terrorists would gain him greater power. Johnson reveals that he is not truly in control of the country. Instead, the United States is secretly ruled by an unseen organization called the Patriots, a shadow group that manipulates politics, the military, the economy, and even presidential elections. According to Johnson, democracy itself is largely theatrical, essentially a stage production designed to shape the public perception, whilst real decisions are made by a mysterious 12-member council known as the Wiseman's Committee. He explains that his predecessor, George Sears, who turns out to be Solidus Snake, was once a Patriot-backed president. After orchestrating the Shadow Moses incident to seize Metal Gear Rex's data, Solidus fell out of favour and was removed from office. The Patriots installed Johnson as a more compliant replacement, but now Solidus seeks revenge and plans to use a new Metal Gear project to challenge the Patriots directly, which isn't Metal Gear Ray, there's another new one. Johnson also confirms that the Big Shell is a cover for this new Metal Gear. Beneath it lies Arsenal Gear, an enormous submersible fortress equipped with thousands of missiles and protected by mass-produced Metal Gear Ray units. Arsenal Gear is designed as a system of information control. It has an AI core called GW that regulates and filters digital data worldwide, which allows the Patriots to shape reality itself and maintain absolute power in the age of information. Johnson admits that he hoped to use Arsenal Gear as leverage to gain entry into the Patriots' ranks, but Solidus instead intends to create rebellion, even threatening to blow up Wall Street to disrupt their control. He wants to overthrow them. With time running out, Johnson gives Raiden a level 4 keycard and a disk containing a virus program modelled after Foxdie. This is literally a digital version of Foxdie, meant to sever the connection between GW and Arsenal Gear. And the only person capable of deploying it is Emma Emmerich. She is being held on basement level 1. Once GW is fully integrated and connected to external networks, Arsenal Gear will become unstoppable. So we need to be swift and swaggy in order to stop it. Johnson then realizes that his biometric ID confirmation will soon finalize the launch process. To prevent the nuclear strike, he begs Raiden to kill him before the system verifies his life science. But Raiden refuses to assassinate the president because, obviously. Before he can decide, Ocelot spawns in the doorway and... As Johnson bleeds out, he tells Raiden not to pursue Ocelot. Without freedom, he says, there is no difference between submission and rebellion. His only real freedom left was the freedom to end his own charade. And with his dying breath, he orders Raiden to find Emma and stop Arsenal Gear. Then he dies. Raiden calls the Colonel to tell him about the mission failure, but the Colonel just keeps reframing the mission and says, nah, don't worry, your new objective is to honour his final words and stop Arsenal Gear. But Raiden is skeptical. If the President was complicit, then why should we trust him? But to be fair, the Colonel raises a good point. The fact that the President chose death instead of allowing the launch should be enough to make us trust him. But Raiden counters that good point with one of his own. If the President's death eliminates the nuclear threat, then doesn't that imply that his assassination would have been the cleaner solution all along? And the Colonel dismisses that point. When Raiden asks about the Patriots, the Colonel claims ignorance, but promises to investigate. Oh, okay, wait, hold on, Snake's calling us now. He asks about the nuclear strike code, and Raiden explains that the President died before his vital ID could be reconfirmed, meaning the terrorists have lost their ability to launch a nuclear strike. Otacon suggests that maybe there's an alternative launch method, and Snake proposes something even more ominous. Perhaps Arsenal Gear itself is the true weapon. Something more powerful and more strategically viable than a nuclear strike. I mean, if it's a Metal Gear, then yeah. Then Raiden realizes something else. Snake already knew about Arsenal Gear. He knew the Big Shell was a cover, and Snake never told us. And he responds with,
You never asked.
I mean, yeah, he's got you there, Raiden. Snake goes on to explain everything that happened in the tanker chapter, but the true damage came afterwards. Photos of Snake, taken by that of the Cypher drone we saw, were released to the media. Snake and Otacon were blamed for sinking the tanker, and overnight they became international terrorists. This was all one big play by the Patriots. By enacting this plan, they managed to discredit Snake, shut down the Marines' independent Metal Gear Ray project, steal Ray, and create an environmental disaster necessary to justify the creation of the Big Shell. Raiden is pretty stunned at all this new information, as is probably every player. He had also trained in VR simulations of the tanker incident and thought he understood the events from 2 years ago. The difference between simulation and truth is becoming a recurring theme, and it'll be coming up even more. After some more swimming, Otacon radios to ask how he's doing, and Raiden reports that the seawater is rapidly filling the structure, making conditions dangerous. Otacon then reveals critical information about Emma. Apparently, she has a severe fear of water, stemming from a childhood accident. But the reason is worse. When Emma was 6, she was in the family swimming pool with their father before they both began drowning. Already off to a bad start. She called out for Otacon's help, because from his bedroom window he could see the pool, but he didn't realise the seriousness of the situation in time. By the time help arrived, Emma survived, but their father did not. Otacon carries crushing guilt because of what happened. Emma apparently believes Otacon abandoned her, and he admits that, in a sense, he betrayed her. Not necessarily by leaving the family after this incident, but by failing to respond when she trusted he would save her. After the accident, Emma and their mother returned to England, and Otacon later learned through a letter that Emma refused to swim again and wouldn't even wear a bathing suit, which is a very weird point to add, but it's there. The trauma fundamentally changed her, and Otacon blames himself completely. And this changes our current objective, because B1 is completely flooded, meaning Emma's rescue is going to be much harder. I mean, if she panics or freezes at the sight of water, then rescue could be impossible. Snake then joins the call to clarify the stakes. The helicopter is still being repaired, so extraction support is unavailable. Emma's survival depends entirely on Raiden. Snake advises him to memorize the layout of the core, because there's going to be no time to consult the map once the rescue begins. Any wrong turn could mean running out of oxygen. Okay, great. That sounds so fun. Let's do this. Opening a door to a new area, Raiden is immediately greeted with the body of Peter Stillman. R.I.P. Peter. You really were a good dude. Soon enough, though, we reach the end of the underwater maze and head into a new room. In this new room is Vamp. Again, this time sitting on some water because he's a brat who wants to make an entrance.
Still ticking, huh?
Unfortunately, hell had no vacancies.
When Raiden fires, Vamp dodges nearly every shot as always, but this time, one bullet grazes his cheek, and he calmly explains how he reads subtle muscle movements to anticipate attacks. He claims human bodies speak their intentions before they act. Raiden, however, is different. His movements don't follow the same patterns, which intrigues Vamp and makes the confrontation, according to him, worth the wait. Vamp confirms that he was expecting Raiden and makes it clear that he cannot allow interference with Arsenal gear. He gestures towards the far door and reveals that Emma is still alive, though she was merely bait meant to draw in the big catch. With the flooding worsening inside the structure, he taunts that she may already be drowning. More critically, Vamp dismantles Raiden's belief that the president's death prevented a nuclear launch. Arsenal gear remains armed with a purified hydrogen bomb. Unlike traditional nuclear weapons, this device uses lasers and magnetic compression to trigger fusion in a cleaner, more controlled way. Solidus himself is unaware of its existence, and once Arsenal gear is activated, the weapon becomes launch ready, meaning the nuclear threat still looms despite everything Raiden has done. Vamp then reframes Dead Cell's motives. 6 months earlier, they were publicly blamed for mass civilian casualties and branded as terrorists in a cover-up. Abandoned and vilified, They claim their only remaining goal is to destroy the corrupt system that sacrificed them, to tear down what they see as a world built on deception. An alarm then interrupts their pleasant chat. Arsenal's activation sequence is now complete. Non-essential personnel are ordered to their stations, and the countdown towards operation has begun. Vamp reveals that he also knows about the computer virus Raiden is carrying. He makes it clear that Raiden will never live long enough to deliver it, but we all know that's bullshit. But it's time to prove that it's bullshit. And when Vamp finally goes down, he does a graceful spin before falling into the non-buoyant water and presumably being caught in an infinite loop of drowning and reviving. With this achievement, Raiden calls the Colonel, not to tell him about Vamp, but to tell him about the final check for Arsenal gear being completed. He says, yeah, go get Emma. So Raiden then calls Papa Snake instead, who heard everything. He tells Raiden him and Otacon will secure the computer room ready for Emma's arrival. Otacon pauses, and Raiden asks him what's up. He claims that he doesn't have the right to see Emma because so many years have passed. But Snake tells him to snap out of it. They can talk about it later. So, we swim a bit more, like a graceful dolphin. Then make it to the room Emma is held up in. Whipping open a locker, Raiden does indeed find Emma, who is way younger than I thought she would be. She also pisses herself, so at least we have it confirmed that she's related to Otacon, I guess. She assumes Raiden is another one of the terrorists, so to prove that he isn't, they communicate on a private channel, which confirms that he carries the same nanotechnology as Project personnel. Raiden explains that he needs her assistance to stop Arsenal. Emma seems surprised that he knows about her role and asks him who told him. When Raiden answers that it was the president, she begins to accept that he may be telling the truth. He asks her to please hurry the hell up because they're both going to drown if she doesn't get a move on. And as water begins pouring into the room, Emma completely blows a fuse and shuts down. When Raiden encourages her, she becomes increasingly distressed, describing her overwhelming fear of water. She also reveals that she was injected with something and is having trouble moving her legs. So not only is she paralyzed out of fear, but also because she's been fucking drugged. Raiden calmly takes control of the situation though, telling her he's going to guide her through the flooded passage and that all she needs to do is hold her breath. To help her manage the panic, he creates a simple focus exercise. He tells her to press her ear against his chest and count his heartbeat to 100, concentrating on the rhythm instead of the surrounding water. He promises to swim faster if she signals that she's running out of air, and this moment actually becomes really sweet. Just as they're about to leave, Emma suddenly stops to remove her glasses. Raiden questions why she wears them if her eyesight is fine, and she admits that they're purely cosmetic because of someone important in her life. They bring her comfort, and she also claims that they give her luck. Finally, Emma climbs onto Raiden's back. She closes her eyes, takes several deep breaths, and prepares to rely entirely on him as they submerge and begin to swim towards safety. As for the swim itself, it's not horrible, it's just not fun. Emma's O2 is much shorter than Raiden's, but I never got her killed, so it can't be that difficult. Eventually, we finish our little swim session and get back to the room we fought Vamp in. The pair take a moment to rest, and Raiden tells Emma how good of a job she did. Yeah, I second that. Good job, Emma. She says focusing on Raiden's heartbeat really did help, and it reminded her of her childhood from when she used to fall asleep on Otacon's back and listen to his heartbeat. She then reflects on how close they once were. As step-siblings in unstable second marriages, they relied almost entirely on each other for affection and security. Lonely and completely isolated, they used to play house, pretending to be husband and wife, which on one hand is really cute if they were the same age, but on the other hand, she was like 6 when Otacon was 17. Although, this game between them being born out of emotional dependency does make sense. Raiden grew up without a family, so he relates to the feeling of longing for connection. Snake and Otacon make contact from the computer room, and Emma speaks to Hal through Raiden's codec. What should be a sweet reunion quickly turns painful. Otacon demands to know why she involved herself in another Metal Gear project despite their family's tragic history, and Emma confesses that part of her motivation was resentment. She felt abandoned by Hal and wanted him to suffer the same way she did. Their unresolved trauma surfaces very openly, but Snake cuts the argument short, insisting that they focus on actually surviving. As they continue towards Shell 1, Raiden shows Emma the disc given to him by the president, and she clarifies that it's a delayed effect worm cluster designed to infiltrate and disable GW. What this actually means is that the virus is a dormant, self-replicating virus that will go unnoticed before spreading and striking. Pretty fucking sick, actually. Emma then explains what GW truly is. It is not merely a military computer system, but an advanced neural network AI built to process and regulate digital information on a global scale. The Patriots fear the uncontrollable spread of data in the modern era with things like scandals, independent journalism, anti-Metal Gear activity, and decentralized information networks. GW's purpose is to filter, categorize, and delete digital data that is deemed inconvenient, effectively shaping recorded history. I'm sure in 2001 that sounded absolutely bonkers, but that's almost exactly the actual dystopia we're living in right now. She argues that digital information is more durable than human memory. People forget, but data persists, unless someone controls it. Through global software distribution at the turn of the century, a hidden subsystem was embedded worldwide, allowing the Patriots to quietly influence what information survives. GW acts as the decision-making core of this system, determining what becomes truth. In other words, whoever controls GW doesn't just control information, they control history itself. However, she reveals that the system lacks sufficient experimental data. It requires a large-scale, real-world test to refine its judgment algorithms. So, with that daunting idea looming above, let's do some more swimming. Also worth noting is the change to gameplay now that you have Emma with you. As we all know, when a civilian is introduced in a military game, and when that civilian needs to be helped escape, you're about to have a bad time trying to keep them safe. In this instance, you have to hold triangle to guide Emma through the big shell. When you're doing this, you can't use weapons, even one-handed ones like the pistols, which I think is a little silly. It's not actually that bad, because you get to decide when you do and don't lead her, but it's still a bit of a ball ache. Eventually, the pair reach a level 5 security door. Shit, we don't have a key for that.
Damn it.
Ta-da!
Hell yeah, Emma! We both somehow make it alive to the very long ladder in strut L. Raiden asks Emma how she feels about heights, but that phobia is below swimming on the phobia list, so we should be fine. Although, when he mentions it's probably 130 feet, she does then get a little more anxious. At least she mentions that the numbness in her legs is gone, so this time she doesn't have to grab hold of us like a baby monkey. Raiden has a little look-see for patrols and a way for Emma and him to get across. There is a few guards, and a few of those drones, but with the sniper, he can cover Emma as she runs across the oil fence. With a plan in mind, Raiden contacts Snake, and Snake tells Raiden to take up a sniper position and protect Emma throughout the crossing. I mean, yeah, I was going to do that anyway, but sure. Raiden brags about his VR training experience, but Snake questions how well simulated training translates to real combat. He also tells him to use his thermal goggles to spot claymores. Thank you, Snake. That was actually a really good bit of advice. Raiden switches to Emma's frequency and explains the plan. She's very anxious about the possibility of falling into the sea or, being shot or blown up, but she trusts him, so it's all good. By the way, the thermal goggles are directly in front of you when you step out of this cutscene. As for the gameplay of this section itself, it's not as horrible as the first game's sniper sections. For starters, you already know that you need pills to help your aiming, and secondly, the pills are much more common than the first game. But other than that, the section is just a little boring and feels way too long. After about halfway, Snake will contact you to let you know that he's here to help. If you give him a call after this call, he will begin shooting enemies alongside you. This is awesome. You finally have a partner during gameplay, and use him because he makes this section much less annoying. After enough time has passed, some crazy shit will happen. Yeah, Vamp is back. Again, for like the 4th time. Thankfully, my quick thinking saves the day, and Vamp takes a fat sniper round to the noggin. And then another, and then another, and then another. This final shot hits him so hard that he goes flying backwards into the water. But then Emma starts walking funny, and then a pool of blood begins forming on her stomach. Emma, I don't think your stomach should be doing that.
Raiden, Emma's been stabbed.
Yeah, Snake, I can see that. Don't worry, Emma. Pretty boy Raiden is coming. Holy shit, this does not look good. Raiden asks what the situation is, and Snake tells us the unfortunate truth. It seems that Vamp has hit some of Emma's organs. They can't stop the bleeding. I guess the silver lining is that Emma set everything up for the virus, and now all we need to do is just pop in the disc. But even that's all fucked up. An antibody agent appears in the system, meaning GW is countering the virus, and then the connection is cut. Otacon quickly deduces that portions of the worm cluster must have been modified after the disc left Emma's hands. The Patriots anticipated we would try this, and it's unknown whether the virus will even work. Emma comes out of her coma to ask if everything is okay, but Snake's little head wag says no. Thankfully, Otacon has the big brother power of lying, so he tells her, "It's all good, dog." She thinks the virus worked, believing she won't add another tragedy to their family's history. She shifts her focus to Otacon, saying she never hated him. As children, she felt abandoned, but she never wanted to stand in the way. When she joined the Arsenal project, part of her motivation was to follow in his footsteps to be closer to him. She wanted him to see her as a woman, but Otacon admits that he could never see her that way. She asks for one final favor, for him to call her Emma.
What's wrong with EE? Emma? 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 Answer me!
In his emotional collapse, he confesses long-buried guilt he had over the accident when Emma was 6. He confesses that Emma's mother seduced him. Well, groomed him and then sexually assaulted him, considering he was 17 at the time. Their father later committed suicide, and Otacon believes his actions destroyed their family. He begs Emma for forgiveness like she's still alive, but she most certainly is not.
Attention! Arsenal gear is ready for launch.
Man, just give us a damn minute. Our best friend just lost his sister. The magic intercom tells all the soldiers to evacuate the upper levels immediately because the big shell is about to be cut loose, meaning it's about to sink. Snake tells Otacon they have to rescue as many hostages as possible using the repaired Kasatka helicopter. But Otacon wants to go out with them into Arsenal gear. But Snake refuses, which, yeah, Otacon, I'm sorry, but I'd have to agree with that. Otacon is the only person that can get the hostages out. He is the only person that can save them, so he accepts the responsibility and leaves with the parrot. Though he breaks down again when the bird says,
"Hal, I miss you." I miss you. I miss you.
Meanwhile, Snake and Raiden prepare to confront Arsenal gear directly if the virus fails. All of a sudden, Snake says,
"You can come out now."
And then the goddamn ninja appears out of thin air. Raiden instinctively reaches for his weapon, but Snake tells him not to move. It's now that the ninja decides to reveal their identity. Turns out, it was Olga all along. Dun dun dun. She then electrocutes the fuck out of Raiden with her sword. Perfect time to do it as well, because the big shell is literally coming down as I speak. But Raiden realizes that he has another game to appear in. So he wakes up under some medical lights that look suspiciously like the ones from the first game in the torture room. We're then flashed with Raiden's straight up, full, naked body. Turns out we're in the same torture device as the first game. Lovely. I can't wait to do that shit again. Anyway, both Ocelot and Solidus are in the room with us, and Ocelot immediately says something harrowing. He claims that Raiden has no official existence. His genome data, his intelligence records, they show nothing. This mission is so secretive that he has been erased. Ocelot describes him as a non-existent operative from a non-existent organization, which really puts into perspective how secretive this mission is. When Solidus and Raiden are face to face, Solidus refers to him as Jack the Ripper. The name cuts through Raiden's fractured identity, and Solidus physically examines him, noting cerebral implants, which suggests memory tampering. He then reveals the truth. In the 1980s Civil War, Raiden was one of the most effective child soldiers. By age 10, he commanded a small boys unit. His kill record earned him infamous nicknames: White Devil and Jack the Ripper. And Solidus himself served as his commanding officer, even calling himself Raiden's godfather. This revelation reframes Raiden's skill. His combat excellence is not talent discovered. It's been present since he was forced into a war as a child. After establishing their shared history, Solidus and Ocelot discuss their larger plan. Arsenal gear is operational, GW is functioning, troops are equipped, and within the hour, they will demonstrate Arsenal's power. Ocelot notes how Solidus now resembles Big Boss because of his eye patch, reinforcing the theme of legacy, the theme of sons inheriting the image of fathers. In other words, clones repeating history. Before leaving, Ocelot confiscates the virus disk Raiden carried, neutralizing what Raiden believed was his strategic advantage. Olga is also here, and to be secretive, she switches to nanocommunications. She has some revelations of her own, and tells us how the Patriots have control over her. So, after the tanker incident, she and her surviving men joined an illegal Russian organization, which she later learned was a Patriot-controlled front. She was also pregnant at some point, and gave birth in a hospital the Patriots owned, and her child was immediately taken from her. Since then, she has been receiving monthly photos of the kid as proof that they're still alive. Fuck man, that's rough. And on top of that, if Raiden fails, her child will die. Great. So, no pressure. Olga then clarifies something crucial. Raiden is not the Patriots' chosen hero. He is a subject in an experiment called the S3 plan. She doesn't explain it, but the implication is that Raiden's entire mission is a controlled test. Even the virus Emma created may have been altered by the Patriots. The resistance effort itself may be part of the design. She says she will free us, but to keep her cover, she gives Raiden a lovely punch to the gut. Are you ready for more dialogue? Too bad, because it's happening. Raiden begins opening up to Rose about his past. He talks about being handed an AK at the age of 6 and having to survive day-to-day combat without any purpose. He also talks about image training. He was forced into daily exposure to violent Hollywood films to normalize the killing. His food was laced with gunpowder, which contained a chemical that induced hallucination and compliance. Food was only given to him as a reward for survival, and he was also drugged to strip away his hesitation. So, all in all, sounds like a pretty cozy time. After the war, NGOs relocated him to the United States, gave him a new identity, and attempted rehabilitation. But the nightmares persisted. His memory was manipulated, yet fragments of it returned in his dreams. He confesses to Rose that he never told her because he was ashamed. He feared she wouldn't understand, and feared even more that becoming a father would pass on the cycle of violence. He believes he was kept alive for one purpose: to confront Solidus. Rose says what all people say about sharing the burden of trauma, but Raiden rejects it. He says no one else can share this big of a burden. In the time it took to listen to that depressing story, he's been released from his bonds, and now we get to run around naked. Finally! That's what the previous Metal Gear game was missing. Exiting the torture room, the Colonel calls. He insists that he continue the mission, despite Raiden having lost all of his equipment. Raiden explains, no, I need to find Snake, believing Snake has his gear. The Colonel dismisses this entirely, stating that Snake was never factored into the simulation, and should be ignored. When Raiden questions whether the Colonel is acting under orders from the Patriots, the Colonel avoids giving a direct answer and instead reframes the mission in strange, detached language. He refers to Raiden's objective as a role in a kind of role-playing game, emphasizing that Raiden is expected to perform perfectly with a predefined script. This triggers a moment of clarity for Raiden. He realizes that he's never actually met the Colonel in person. The authority guiding him may not be what it claims to be. When Raiden directly asks who the Colonel really is, the Colonel refuses to answer and abruptly escalates the manipulation. He claims they have Rosemary, effectively threatening her to ensure Raiden's compliance. The transmission ends very quickly, leaving Raiden increasingly aware that the command structure he trusted may be artificial. This section took me fucking ages to get through, because I didn't really understand what I was supposed to do. However, I don't dislike this section, because it is also really, really creepy. Nothing feels correct. Every time you go in between rooms, for example, the name changes, often titling the room as real places in Japan. To add to that feel is a really creepy call from the Colonel. For starters, he answers the call facing away from you, and opens by saying he has something to tell us, something he couldn't before. He claims last week he saw a guy leaving Rosemary's room. He goes on, but cuts himself off mid-sentence. He will also occasionally call you to babble about the Shadow Moses incident, repeating objectives he told Snake during that time, talking to you like he's talking to Snake, and playing training footage of the VR missions that I'm assuming trained Raiden. All of this is to reinforce that feeling of unease and making you think maybe you're still in the simulation. I mean, who's to say any of this is real? We don't have full confirmation that any part of this is actually happening.
Actually, I'm in really bad shape financially. I pay money to my ex-wife as part of our divorce settlement, among other bills. I just had no choice but to make you pay for lunch the other day. I'm really sorry. The graveyards are full of indispensable men.
Yeah, man, that's great, Colonel, but could you not? You're freaking me out. Eventually, and possibly after kicking a few guards with Raiden's naked feet, you will enter the colon of Arsenal Gear. Now is the perfect time for Rose to call and confess that their first meeting 2 years ago at Federal Hall was not a coincidence. She had been ordered by the Patriots to monitor him. Over the course of their relationship, she secretly reported every aspect of his personal life, his actions, words, and behavior back to them. What the fuck, Rose? Why would you do that, you evil, evil woman? Rose admits that she was acting under orders, but insists that her love for him was genuine. Everyone says that, man. Come up with something original. She says she reshaped herself to match his psychological profile, altering her appearance, her interests, even her personality to become the woman he would fall for. Raiden recognizes that he, too, was complicit in the illusion, falling in love with an ideal rather than a real person. The relationship, he suggests, was artificial on both sides, and as emotions reach their peak, Rose interrupts him with a shocking confession. She says that she is pregnant with his child. However, her voice when she says this is distorted and unstable.
I'm carrying. I'm pregnant, Jack.
It's clearly an effort to keep Raiden attached to Rose. All of a sudden, Snake shows up, presumably checking out Raiden's ass. For some reason, Snake revealing himself makes Raiden sneeze, probably out of jealousy for Snake's badass suit. He points out Raiden's gear, so Raiden suits up, finally putting his dick away. Once he's clothed, Snake explains that he used Raiden as bait to infiltrate Arsenal Gear. He also admits that he withheld information about Olga, brushing off Raiden's frustration as being used as bait. The virus Emma uploaded has yet to show visible effects, and they confirm that Arsenal is under the Patriots' control and heading towards Manhattan. Ahead of them lies a major threat: 25 mass-produced Metal Gear Ray units. Snake reassures Raiden that they will fight because they have zero alternative. He provides Raiden with Olga's sword. This will go on to pretty much reshape his entire identity in later games. Snake also offers Raiden his ammo if he needs it. When Raiden asks if Snake will be fine, he points to his bandana and tells Raiden he has infinite ammo, which, if you didn't know, is referring to the first game. Depending on your performance in that game, you can be given a bandana as a reward for beating the game, and with the bandana equipped, you're granted infinite ammo. The conversation then turns deeply personal. Raiden questions whether he has ever enjoyed killing, admitting that his sense of reality feels distorted and confessing that it's hard to tell between reality and a game. He confesses that his past as a child soldier was real, not a virtual simulation. Snake responds by saying they don't fight for fame or legacy, but for the future. Legends, he explains, are manipulated narratives. What actually matters is choosing something to believe in and passing it on. When Raiden asks what he should believe in, Snake leaves the answer open. That's a choice Raiden needs to make for himself. Their exchange is interrupted by Otacon, who confirms the hostages are safe, but notes something strange about the Colonel's recent transmission. Raiden admits that he's never actually met the Colonel, deepening the sense of unease. Before they can process it further, they are spotted by Arsenal security and forced into combat against the Tengu soldiers. I love this section so much. In direct contrast to earlier, where Snake was helping from afar, we're now in the heat of battle right alongside him. It is so cool to have an actual companion. And of course, you get to use the sword if you so please, which is really good, but I must admit, it's really annoying to use. You can't move when you're swinging, which means you have to get right up close to an enemy before you can kill them. Doing that is hard enough as is during regular stealth, but now every soldier on the face of the planet is shooting at you. You can, though, deflect bullets from enemies directly in front of you, but every other bullet will hit you and stun you for the brief animation that plays when getting shot. This also leaves you open for another attack, either from another bullet or a soldier punching you square in the jaw. After clearing the room of guards, Otacon contacts us. He's traced the Colonel's signal. It's coming from inside Arsenal gear. The encryption protocol matches that of Arsenal's AI system, GW. Otacon concludes that the Colonel Raiden has been speaking to is not a real person, but an AI construct. More specifically, GW has likely been manipulating Raiden's nanomachines to stimulate dormant areas of the brain, effectively generating the Colonel's voice through Raiden's own expectations and memories. Raiden naturally struggles to accept this truth. If the Colonel was an illusion, then what does that say about his mission? About his choices? Was everything he's done simply part of a controlled simulation? Snake snaps him out of the spiral and grounds Raiden in reality. Regardless of what is and isn't manipulation, Raiden himself is real. He is physically present. He has agency. Snake tells him he can walk away if he wants, but Raiden refuses. Despite all the manipulation, he chooses to press forward. Speaking of spirals, the Colonel suddenly contacts Raiden in a panic, claiming that Rose has been captured and is being held somewhere inside Arsenal gear. Rose's voice follows, crying out for help. Hearing this, Raiden's immediate reaction is to rush to her rescue, but Snake stops him, noting that this is absolutely a trap. He points out the obvious flaw. If the Colonel doesn't exist, if he's merely an AI construct, then he cannot physically capture Rose. Raiden hears this and is like, oh yeah, duh. But then a far more disturbing thought surfaces. If the Colonel was partially created by his own mind, what about Rose? What if she too is a constructed memory? What if everything he believes about her, their relationship, and their past is another layer of artificial control? Snake pushes back, urging him not to spiral into paranoia, but Raiden can't shake the doubt. The foundations of his reality are collapsing. He references Olga's earlier cryptic warnings, suggesting this psychological unraveling may also have been part of the larger design all along. But why think about that when we can rush into the next room holding a sword? And I'm sure many gamers around the world, immediately clocked this new room as a massive fighting chamber. And yeah, we were all right. Snake and Raiden are ambushed by so many Tengu soldiers. Thankfully though, we're both badasses, so after a frustrating couple minutes or so, Fortune appears with her massive railgun. She immediately addresses Snake, blaming him for the death of her father. When Raiden protests the plan to launch a nuclear strike, Fortune coldly replies that if she cannot be killed, she may as well just kill everyone else, beginning with Snake. Okay, that's a bit selfish, but you do you. Snake quickly recognizes the situation. This fight is his, so he orders Raiden to move ahead while he holds her off. Raiden protests because he knows bullets can't hit her, but Snake says, shut up bro, witches aren't real. so Raiden leaves as Snake unloads on Fortune. Reaching the top of the ladder, Raiden enters the friggin' Shadow Realm, a seemingly infinite void in a random part of Arsenal gear. Fortunately, he's not alone, and Solidus's sexy voice begins bellowing out throughout the void. Solidus reveals that he has been watching Raiden fight throughout the mission. What he has seen interests him. Raiden's combat style, the speed and brutality of his movements remind Solidus of the boy he once trained during the Liberian Civil War. Solidus questions whether these instincts are returning naturally or if they are a result of the S3 plan. He explains that Ocelot recently uncovered classified data from Arsenal Gear's AI system which described the S3 program. According to Solidus, S3 stands for Solid Snake Simulation. The Patriots designed the program as a way to artificially recreate the conditions that produced the legendary soldier, Solid Snake. Rather than cloning Snake physically, the Patriots attempted something more subtle. By carefully controlling a soldier's environment, training, missions, and the psychological pressures, they believed they could replicate the experiences that shaped Snake into the perfect warrior. Through VR training, mission scripting, and manipulation of events, they hoped to create another soldier capable of matching Snake's abilities. Raiden is the result of this experiment. As we already know from playing the game, Raiden was trained through extensive VR simulations designed to mirror Shadow Moses. His mission on the Big Shell has followed the same layout: infiltration, hostage rescue, bomb disposal, encounters with weird fucking enemies, and confrontations with Metal Gear tech. All of it has been structured to replicate the circumstances Snake once faced. So Raiden is the Patriots' attempt to manufacture another Solid Snake. But Solidus also reveals that he understood something was wrong from the beginning. Snake's sudden appearance on the Big Shell and Raiden's arrival as a Foxhound operative made it clear to him that the Patriots had inserted agents into his operation. Realizing he was being observed and manipulated, Solidus decided to turn the situation to his advantage. Instead of resisting the plan outright, he allowed the Patriots scenario to continue while using Raiden as bait to expose their interference and gather information. Solidus then turns the conversation towards Raiden's past. He reminds him that the war they fought together in Liberia was not a simulation or a constructed exercise. That war was real. A brutal conflict where every day was a struggle between life and death. In that war, Raiden survived by killing without hesitation. Solidus suggests that Raiden tried to escape that past, bearing the identity of Jack the Ripper beneath VR training and a new military career. Yet, now the Patriots have dragged him back into war through something artificial. A carefully constructed battlefield designed to awaken those same instincts. Solidus then appears, sliding across the floor like he's in an anime. He declares that the time for manipulation and games is over. Now that Raiden understands the truth behind the S3 plan, there is no longer any reason to keep him alive. However, rather than fighting Raiden like a man, Solidus chooses to test him. So, like a little bitch, he sends 3 Metal Gear Rays to fight Raiden instead. I mean, honestly though, this boss fight isn't that hard. It's just a little confusing at first. What you should really be doing is hitting the Ray's legs first, which will make it stumble and lower its head. If you launch a missile in there, it will cause massive damage. 2 successful cycles of this will be enough to take one down. But most importantly, is to make sure you're always on the move, lest you be leathered by Ray's attacks. After Raiden fires the final Stinger missile, yet another one shows up, and this is enough for Raiden to fall to his knees and give up. One of the Rays attempts to smush Raiden, but Olga appears from nowhere and is all like, "Nuh-uh, you won't be doing that." She tells Raiden to escape while she holds off the machines. Oh, give it a rest, I'm sick of everyone saying that. Despite knowing she will likely die, and believing she is already destined for hell, Olga insists that saving her child gives her actions meaning. So, Solidus accepts her challenge. Charging forward with ruthless efficiency, he disarms Olga using his mechanical tentacle arm and grabs her by the throat. As she struggles, she tells Raiden simply to live. I mean, that's going to be a bit hard, Olga, if I'm about to fight a dude with fucking Doc Ock arms. Solidus then... R.I.P. Olga. I never really liked you. As Solidus prepares to resume the execution of Raiden, the remaining Ray units begin malfunctioning. Instead of attacking Raiden, they decide to go after Solidus. Ocelot radios in to report that GW is experiencing catastrophic system failure. The virus is finally corrupting its neural network, causing unpredictable behaviour across the system. But because Solidus is badass as hell, he takes down the Metal Gears with ease.
Damn the Patriots!
He then picks up Raiden by the throat, but decides not to kill him just yet. Then Fortune appears with a handcuffed Snake, and Raiden is knocked the fuck out. When reawakened, Raiden is forced to listen to another speech from Solidus. He explains that the corruption of the AI has destroyed his ability to retrieve the information he wanted from GW. His real objective was never to control Arsenal Gear itself. What he really wanted was access to a list of the Patriots' leaders, the 12 members of the secret Wiseman's Committee who control global information flow. This would allow him to expose and eliminate them individually. But now, that's impossible for him since the virus corrupted GW. Ocelot explains how everything here was orchestrated, and that's enough for Fortune to try and kill him. It doesn't work, obviously, and Ocelot lands a bullet in Fortune's chest. Wait, how the fuck did he do that? Well, her apparent invulnerability came from electromagnetic technology developed by the Patriots that deflected incoming projectiles. She had been unknowingly protected throughout the mission to maintain the illusion of her powers. Despite the hole in her chest, she manages to still fire her railgun at Ocelot, but he has the same device, and activates it, causing her shot to miss. Solidus is now also angry enough to try and kill Ocelot, but again, it doesn't work, and Ocelot steals a Metal Gear Ray, just like at the start of the game. He tries murking Solidus, but Solidus deflects the bullets. Fortune then steps up to the plate, saying, "Fuck you, I definitely have superpowers." And against all expectations, every missile Ocelot has fired is deflected away from the group, leaving everyone, and you as the player, stunned. For a moment, it appears Fortune's luck may have been real after all. She then reveals her true name, Helena Dolph Jackson, daughter of Scott Dolph, who was the Marine commander from the beginning of the game. Did we ever know his name? Why was this an important story beat? Anyway, Ocelot prepares another attack, but Liquid says nah and takes control of his arm again. He declares that he has been waiting for this moment, and reveals that he has manipulated events from within Ocelot's body before escaping with the Metal Gear Ray, intending to destroy the Patriots himself. Snake breaks free from his handcuffs through sheer strength, I guess, and chases after him by straight up diving off the edge of Arsenal Gear. I mean, were you expecting him not to? Don't be silly. Arsenal Gear then begins to speed up, shooting below the Verrazano Bridge and making its way very quickly towards Manhattan. The game then just straight up changes scenes. Raiden and Solidus are falling off of Arsenal Gear, Solidus a little more gracefully than Raiden. They land on the roof of a building. Who would have guessed? But not any building. They have landed on the roof of Federal Hall. And guess what day it is?
April 30th?
That's right, baby. All roads lead back to April 30th. The reason this is so important right now is that 200 years ago exactly, George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States at that very location. Solidus reveals that he had intended to declare a new independence there, a symbolic rebirth of the nation, free from the hidden control of the Patriots. Raiden dismisses Solidus's words as an excuse for seeking power, but Solidus insists that power is not his true goal. Instead, he claims to be fighting to reclaim the founding ideals of the United States. Freedom, civil rights, opportunity, all that shit. which he believes the Patriots are systematically erasing through their control of digital information. According to Solidus, the Patriots intend to reshape society through censorship and manipulation of the digital world. He then reflects on the nature of human legacy. Every person eventually dies, but humanity survives by passing on genetic material and knowledge to the next generation. However, Solidus and his clone brothers were engineered to be sterile, unable to reproduce. As a result, they cannot leave behind a traditional legacy through descendants. To Solidus, this makes memory and historical impact even more important. He explains that just as genes contain meaningful segments called exons and discarded segments called introns, he refuses to be an insignificant fragment of history. Instead, he wants to leave a permanent mark and be remembered by future generations. Before Raiden can respond, the Colonel contacts him through the codec, saying that although part of Arsenal Gear's AI network was destroyed, the Patriots themselves still exist. The Colonel and Rose begin speaking in unsettling tones, with their appearances glitching and distorting. They reveal that their digital consciousness has gradually evolved within the structures of political power over the past 2 centuries. According to them, the Patriots represent the embodiment of American discipline and order, an entity that cannot simply be destroyed as long as the nation itself exists. Raiden challenges them, accusing the Patriots of planning to suppress individual freedom by censoring the internet. The AI explains that their objective is not censorship in the traditional sense, but something they call creating context. They argue that the modern digital age has produced an overwhelming flood of meaningless information, rumours, misinterpretations, slander, and trivial details that are endlessly preserved online. This uncontrolled mass of data, they claim, prevents meaningful cultural evolution because nothing is filtered or refined. To illustrate their reasoning, the AI compares cultural information to genetics. Just as natural selection determines which genes survive and are passed on, they believe humanity's digital information must also be filtered so that only valuable knowledge survives. Without this progress, society becomes overwhelmed by conflicting truths and moral contradictions. Individuals retreat into isolated communities where their personal beliefs go unchallenged, creating a chaotic environment where no shared understanding of truth exists. From the Patriots' perspective, humanity has proven incapable of responsibly managing its own freedom. In the age of global communication, a single individual now has the power to spread misinformation or destabilize society. Therefore, the AI claims that it must guide and regulate humanity's collective memory and cultural evolution. Raiden rejects this idea and insists that individuals should have the right to determine their own beliefs and values. The AI counters by questioning whether Raiden even possesses true free will, and they argue that human identity is often nothing more than a convenient illusion shaped by outside influences, borrowed ideas, and emotional self-preservation. People constantly abandon old beliefs and adopt new ones whenever it benefits them. To be fair, this whole argument is kinda hard to disagree with. It's then revealed to us that S3 doesn't stand for Solid Snake Simulation. It stands for Selection for Societal Sanity, a system designed to test methods of controlling human behaviour, decision-making and consciousness. The success of the simulation proves human will can be directed and controlled under the right circumstances. They explain that Raiden himself was chosen for this role because of his psychological profile. Unlike other child soldiers raised by Solidus, Raiden suppressed his traumatic past and avoided confronting painful truths. Because of this tendency to deny reality and accept comforting illusions, he was particularly susceptible to manipulation. The Patriots conclude that Raiden's experiences were merely byproducts of a larger test. The true objective was to prove that human thought and behaviour could be engineered and guided through controlled environments and information. And with the experiment complete, the AI issues a final command. Raiden must kill Solidus Snake. And this is the moment where Metal Gear Solid 2 finally shows its hand. Up until now, the Big Shell incident looked like a terrorist crisis, but it was never about that. The whole thing was an experiment, a test designed to see if human behaviour, identity, and belief could be shaped through controlled information and carefully constructed circumstances. Metal Gear Solid 2 wasn't just telling a story about secret conspiracies. It was asking a question that has only become more relevant since 2001. In a world where information can be manipulated, filtered, and rewritten, how are we supposed to decide what's real? Solidus approaches Raiden and addresses him as his son. He reveals a devastating truth. He was the one who killed Raiden's parents during the Civil War where Raiden grew up. Afterward, he adopted the boy and raised him as a child soldier, turning him into Jack the Ripper. Solidus claims he did this in order to understand whether their lives were truly controlled by forces beyond their control. He explains that their situation mirrors the relationship between Big Boss and his cloned sons, Solid and Liquid Snake. Those two fought to free themselves from their genetic destiny, and Solidus believes Raiden must do the same by confronting and overcoming him. To prove his point, Solidus tosses Raiden a sword, cutting his restraints and freeing him. He also reveals another reason for wanting Raiden dead. Even though the Patriots erased much of the data inside Arsenal Gear's AI system, fragments of information about them still exist within Raiden's nanomachines and neural network. Defeating Solidus represents Raiden rejecting the identity forced on him by the Patriots and choosing his own path. And it might honestly be one of the most satisfying deaths in the franchise. As Solidus makes a final aggressive move, lunging forward and striking downward with both blades, Raiden anticipates the attack and dodges to the side. As Solidus moves past him, Raiden seizes the opportunity and swings his sword into Solidus's back. The blade pierces through the armored exoskeleton and severs his spine. Blood absolutely just pours from the wound while sparks erupt from the damaged machinery. It's fucking awesome. Fatally wounded, Solidus drops both of his swords and staggers towards the edge of the rooftop. For a brief moment, he looks down over the edge of the building. He then turns away from the drop, extending his arms as his strength fails, before falling. Solidus lands near the statue of George Washington that stands in front of Federal Hall, and in his final moments, he reaches towards said statue, symbolically acknowledging the ideals of freedom and revolution he believed he was fighting for. After one last breath, he dies. After the battle, Raiden climbs down from the roof and finds himself standing alone in the middle of the street. Gradually, people begin appearing around him, walking past like everything is normal. Despite everything that has occurred, the world simply continues moving forward. No one recognizes Raiden or the events he has just endured. Standing in the crowd, Raiden asks himself a fundamental question.
Who am I really?
No one quite knows who or what they are.
Well said, Snake. People are shaped by their memories, their experiences, and the roles they are given in life. Even if Raiden's past was manipulated or fabricated, the feelings and choices he experienced during the mission are still his own. Snake expands on this idea by arguing that absolute reality does not truly exist. Much of what people consider real is constructed through perception, interpretation, and belief. What matters is not whether something is objectively real, but how individuals choose to interpret and act upon it. When Raiden asks what he should believe in, or what he should leave behind, Snake answers that people ultimately pass on their beliefs and ideals. What people choose to fight for is what shapes the future. Snake encourages Raiden not to obsess over the words and labels imposed upon him. Instead, Raiden should search for the meaning behind those ideas and decide his own path. At that moment, Snake notices Raiden's dog tag, which is actually a really, really cool detail. At the beginning of the game, it asks you to name yourself. For the entire mission, that name sits hidden on Raiden's dog tag. In other words, the identity guiding Raiden through this operation was never truly his. It was ours, the player. So when Raiden finally removes the dog tag and throws it away, he isn't just rejecting the Patriots experiment, he's rejecting the role the player gave him as well. For the first time in the entire game, Raiden chooses his own identity. He declares that he will choose his own life and find something meaningful to pass on to the future. Before leaving, Raiden asks Snake about a few of the loose ends. Snake promises to search for Olga's kid, and he assures Raiden that as long as he stays alive, the child will remain safe. Raiden also brings up Liquid's escape, now having fully taken over Ocelot. But Snake tells us that he secretly placed a transmitter on the stolen Metal Gear Ray, so it's all good. Snake also reveals another twist. The disc Raiden used earlier was not the real Patriots list. The virus implanted in the AI only erased specific data identifying the Patriots, meaning the parameters of the virus can be analysed to locate where that information was stored. Snake now possesses the real data that could lead them to the Patriots themselves. Despite Raiden's eagerness to help, Snake tells him he has something more important to do first. He needs to confront his own life. He then disappears into the crowd like an assassin. And right after he leaves, Raiden notices Rose waiting for him. She asks what's wrong, and Raiden tells her that nothing has changed, even though he still wonders who he truly is. Rose responds that neither of them knows that answer yet, but they can discover it together. Standing in the same place where they first met, Raiden begins to reflect on what he wants to pass on to the future. He realizes that human legacy is not limited to genetic inheritance. Beyond DNA, people pass down ideas, values, culture, emotions, and knowledge to the next generation. Raiden describes how people transmit things like compassion, sorrow, joy, and creativity, elements of human experience that cannot be encoded in genes. Rose jokingly asks if this speech is a marriage proposal, and the two look forward to the future together. But there's more. Snake delivers a final monologue reflecting on the meaning of human legacy. He explains that life is not merely about passing on genetic material. Humanity leaves behind something far greater through culture, through art, stories, and music. These elements preserve human emotions, and their struggles, and knowledge across generations. Snake describes humanity's responsibility to pass on its history, even its mistakes and tragedies, so that future generations can learn from them. Using the tools of the digital age, humanity can preserve its collective memory. Even if the human species eventually disappears, it still has the duty to leave traces of its existence behind. He concludes by saying building the future and preserving the past are ultimately the same act. Okay, just one more thing, I promise. After the credits, Snake and Otacon examine the data disk containing the supposed list of the Patriots. Otacon confirms that the disk contains the personal information of 12 individuals believed to be members of the Patriots' inner circle. However, the discovery leads to a horrifying revelation. All 12 of the listed individuals are already dead. According to the records, they died roughly 100 years ago. This reveals that the true nature of the Patriots and the system controlling the world may be far more mysterious and powerful than anyone had imagined. And that's where Metal Gear Solid 2 leaves us. A story about information, manipulation, identity, and legacy, all unfolding through the mission Raiden just survived. I fucking love this game. I really did enjoy the first one, but man, MGS 2 is so much better. I mean, it's pretty much identical to the first game, just with improvements to everything. It has a more interesting story, better graphics, better gameplay, and better characters. It's just better. The first game will always be the most iconic, but MGS 2 absolutely nails what it's going for. It was purposefully falsely advertised in order to make the shock of not getting what you were expecting interconnect with the story of the game. You can't do something like that again. Yeah, people were pissed off when it came out, but they still played it, and then they understood how good it was. I also love how ridiculous this one is. The franchise as a whole will get much more batshit crazy after this one. I mean, it was never fully serious, but this is the first time in the MGS franchise that you start to think to yourself, what the fuck is going on? All in all, I couldn't have asked for a better sequel to an amazing and iconic first game. I'm also a sucker for well-done simulation stories, and God knows this game fucking nails it. So there we go, Metal Gear Solid 2. 2 games down, so many more to go. I can't wait, but man, I'm gonna have to sprinkle some other games in between them all. I know by this point my final Tomb Raider video will be out, and well, as of recording this, it has been a long time since that came out. And as of writing this, I was planning to get the Resident Evil 9 video done, which again, has been fucking ages since that's been done. I apologise for how long this video has taken me. Not because it was difficult either, I just procrastinated a little bit. With all that being said, I will now bid you adieu. Thank you for watching, do all that YouTube shit, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.